It is indeed a pleasure to have this privilege to play here for you. We intend to give you a very fine program, so just settle back, relax, and enjoy the moment.
Ooh, what up? What up? Good morning. Happy Thursday. Look at B-Man. Thank you for saying good morning, setting the tone. Establishing the culture. Ooh, I forgot to do something. Okay. Hopefully it won't jack up anything. Alright, what up, Whiskey Neat? Good to top of the morning to you. What up, Justin? I need a Whiskey Neat noise. I'm like being disrespectful. Like, Whiskey Neat, like you were part of the original fam. But I got a Justin sound. Alright. What up, Megsy Wegsy? What up? I want to say first up, look, I went to my P.O. box for the first time in months, and I just want to say thank y'all, people who sent me holiday cards and even birthday well wishes. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. We got a great day. We got a hell of a day. I'm excited. I am excited. You probably can tell if you follow me on Instagram. I've been really trying to play this up. A lot of hip hop, a lot of use of the word fly. But yeah, we got Caroline, the only Caroline we acknowledge for at least this week, right? Until we meet another dope Caroline. But we got Caroline Grego coming to the live stream at 8:30. So if you popped in real prompt, real crispy, real on time, like real, she coming at 8:30. We're gonna open up the Zoom room. Matter of fact, before I forget, let me go ahead and just pull up Zoom, because I'll sit up here and like wonder where she is and totally space out. I'm so ahead of myself. Look, full disclosure, ADHD brain, whatever it is, bipolar 2. I was so ahead of the game. I stayed up late because I just had an eventful evening. We sat down with the Friends of Gadsden Creek, sat down with Mariah Parker and Miss Hattie Whitehead of Athens, Georgia, yesterday. So like it's us, a key part of our clique over there at FOGC, and just so yesterday evening I was just kind of hyped up. I thought I was gonna crash after our sit down, but I can't wait to. I already told them I'm inviting Miss Hattie and Mariah to the live stream. So I'm fingers crossed, they're very busy, especially Mariah, but we're gonna try to make sure that we bring Mariah and Miss Hattie to the live stream. But full disclosure, very ADHD brain. And I'm ahead of myself though. I did everything last night. Newsletter went out this morning, did everything last night. So I'm like, Tamika, what are you missing? Like, what's going on? Good morning, El Cool J. Driving and listening. Hey, be safe. And thank you so much for always communicating. I'm glad you're back in town. El Cool J. What up, Agent M? How you doing? All right, I'm just going to set up everything. I just don't want to show my Zoom back in. Why is that still there? Oh, I don't know. All right, anyway, let me just, okay, that's pulled up. Cool. I just don't want to show the back end on camera. Not yet, right? Yeah, so here we go. Let me see. Got that. Let's switch it up. Let's, hold on. Hold on 1 second. Let's make sure I add everything up. So at 8:30, Caroline shopping. You know what I like about Caroline? She and I, we had a planning call. Let me switch it up. Hey, Joni, you've been on my mind. I'm gonna hit you up on Instagram. I'm gonna check in. Here we go. Good morning. Here you go. I had to change up the graphic because what I want to do is continue to have like historians and other people, who are going to lift up Black history and aspects of Black history that are lesser known or that would deserve more time, more air time and all that. Anyway, but this is the graphic that went out. If you got the newsletter, this went out. Historians edition. Hopefully we'll get more and more historians, but I'm super excited to have Caroline dropping in at 8:30. What I was saying now, what I was about to say is what I liked about Caroline is that, and about guests like Caroline, she's really thoughtful about what we would talk about, like super thoughtful. So we had a call And, you know, of course, first we started corresponding, fangirling over each other, talking our ish. I'm talking our ish about the Post and Courier. Her from a very astute and from a very scholarly perspective. I myself, whatever. But we corresponded, then we talked, then we lined this up, and then we sent back and forth like topics, possible topics, or rather she sent me possible topics after our conversation. Point of the matter is, what I'm trying to say is, I'm excited because she's engaged with the process, and her being so thoughtful and attentive to what we would talk about and structuring the conversation, to me just screams like, yes, this is the kind of engaged guest you want. So I hope to speak with more authors, and Caroline is an author. But yeah, you get to know a lot about her. And if you did open up the newsletter this morning, there was a little blurb. I want to read that since it's go back. I want to read that little blurb that I included in the. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm emailing her at 6:22 this morning. Like, oh, did you see this article? Did you see this article in the Post and Courier? It's about preservation. Let's talk about it today. 6:22. So here we go. So yeah, this is okay. So this is the newsletter you got this morning. If you opened it up, right, and down here's a little bit about Caroline. So it says Caroline Grego is a historian of and from South Carolina. She grew up in Columbia, went to schools around the country for her undergraduate and graduate degrees, and then returned to the Carolinas after earning her PhD in history. So you can call her doctor. I asked her that too. I'm like, should I call you doctor? She's like, nah, that's for the classroom. You know, just call me Caroline. All right. So we can call that Caroline. All right. What up, Brandon? All right. She now teaches as a visiting. Shout out to the new follow. Big Rilla. Okay, Big Rilla. Welcome. Finding a name I can pronounce. Joni, you remember when I used to call you Jonic James? I was like, wait, what? I used to call B-Me and Tick. I didn't know it was you time. All right, back to Caroline. All right, she got her PhD in history. She now teaches as a visiting assistant professor in the history department at Queen's University of Charlotte. Her research and writing most look at South Carolina during the early decades of Jim Crow, from the 1880s to the 1930s. So I'm really excited about having this conversation. And what really made me, I wanted to be very intentional about the guests also, that because this month is going to center the Black experience, the Black lived experience. I want to focus on Charleston, but I think some of our Black history will definitely, 28 days is a lot of days. So we might take it out of Charleston and maybe just focus on South Carolina. Believe me, there's more than I would need a whole year, 365 days to really talk about our history and culture. So I'm trying to keep it as hyper local as possible, at least as local to this region. So what really made me want to welcome Caroline onto the to the live stream was her area of study, was her area of expertise, the Jim Crow area, and also because, of course, she was one of the collaborators on that op-ed that was featured in the Washington Post. Let me find it right quick. The Washington Post article that talked about why the Post and Courier, when it comes to plantation real estate or real estate that is tied to, the enslavement of Africans, or the wealth created, like the wealthy who owned slaves. And like she talks about those properties and those plantations. And she questioned why the Post and Courier just would not include those details when trying to sell these properties, which also tells you a lot about Post and Courier in terms of like they're a paper, right? So if you're going to post a story about a plantation or a certain property that was either run by or built by enslaved labor, if you're going to sell it, acknowledge it. Just put it in there. Hiding it and just glamorizing and romanticizing it is not cool. And so I really appreciate that perspective. I thought sometimes, again, I meet people who validate the things that I've been, and I'm sure like a lot of y'all probably see that in me. What up, Caroline? I didn't even see you there. What up? I don't have a sound effect for you other than, yeah. Right. Yeah, I'm gonna get ready. Let me get focused. So let me just find the article one more time. Caroline Grego, and I know she co-authored it with other folks that I am dying to talk to as well. Professor Ashley being on the top of the list. All right. So this is the article just to jog your memories. For those who are newer to the live stream, welcome. Good morning. What up, Big Rilla? Thank you for saying good morning. How you feeling? All right. Community, say hello to Big Rilla as we get to know them. All right. What up, April? Hey, Jessica. Say what up to Brandon. Brienne, you in the house? Owl Lady. Ooh. That's a fine. Owl Lady. Yeah. Welcome. Yeah. This is a beautiful space. Beautiful. Okay, here we go. So portraying plantations as luxury real estate downplays the legacy of slavery. I think that's all you need to know. In terms of like what's going to inform the conversation. Again, going back to the newsletter, you learn more about her. Caroline, shout out to you. Jessica, thank you for the gifting Big Rilla a sub. I appreciate you. Yeah. You beat somebody to the punch. I appreciate it. So yeah, I think this blurb, this little excerpt from Caroline's bio and the title of that article pretty much get you ready for what we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about, like, my friend Brian. Again, I'm pulling it up just because it's relevant. Brian's blurb, I loved it. I love just to read his scholarship. Shout out to Brian. He was on the call with the Lennon folks last night. Let me see real quick. I want to get his. No, that ain't it. Let me see what happens when I do this. I love to read his perspective as someone who was studying history, culture, preservation here. He put me on game. Let me do it like this. He put me on game. Preservation. Look at you. Here we go. It was B. Okay. Cool. So yeah, my friend Brian, shout out. Jersey dude, Jersey stand up, but in another part of the country right now. All right. So here we go. I'm going to read this to y'all. And again, this will get us ready. We're going to look at the front page because we got about 15 minutes before Caroline. I repeat, 15 minutes before Caroline. All right. So this is what Brian wrote, and again, I think this will get us ready. All right, the Charleston preservation regime does even more to just protect history of the Confederacy and bury/whitewash the history of slavery. Though this is him just talking to me in an email, so though we know that it does that for sure, right? By working to preserve and monetize white history and heritage, the industry also works to perpetuate the same narrative that it glorifies. So, for instance, the Preservation Society and Historic Charleston Foundation do not just preserve homes, but function as tools for Black displacement and gentrification.
Now listen.
Okay, that's bars, right? Right. And he put in parentheses, the Preservation Society developed the nation's first historic district, which acted as early redlining, and Historic Charleston Foundation's model was to literally purchase Black property. This is historic. That's why, I challenge them when they pop up in spaces and talk about how, we're leading the way in preservation. We're the most historic city. Fuck out of here, right? All right. So the Historic Foundation's model was literally to purchase Black property here in the Low Countries and South Carolina, you could argue, and pass it to white buyers who would restore it. Going back to April's interview, talking about luxury simplified, right? Oh, we're restoring these shotgun homes. And I used to fall for it too. Again, as a content creator, I didn't have that analysis. I was just making this shit pretty, right? I wrote posts with luxury simplified as well, so didn't know that. I was like, oh wow, they're preserving all these Black homes and restoring them and all the science and no. All right. Historic districts protect white landowners and give them control over what happens in certain areas of town. That's why I think it's odd that the Post and Courier is like today's front page, yesterday's front page. They keep emphasizing this preservation move and the preservation awards that were just earned or won. I don't know if they were earned. Like the Post and Courier is really beating the drum when it comes to school choice. Like the Education Lab series is just about school choice and popularizing school choice. They've got an article today about school choice in the paper. They've just been really weird about preservation and school choice, like really pushing this narrative, and especially like featuring Boone Hall. So, Boone Hall's giving away a couple stacks. Pay taxes, Boone Hall. And how about you reallocate that land that you didn't farm, that you didn't work, that your ancestors didn't work? You just benefit from black labor, right? Black labor, white wealth. Let me go back to this document real quick because we got 14 minutes till, Caroline. All right. Historic districts protect white landowners and give them control over what happens in certain areas of town. Similarly, the conservation of wilderness, okay, think up 17, not Call, but the other place where I called Jumanji, that I almost, where a century-old alligator almost got me in the fam, me and my clique, me and my homies, all right? I forgot what it's called already. Damn. Rebecca. All right, so let me say it again. Similarly, the conservation of wilderness, right? And plantation spaces. Similarly, the conservation of wilderness and plantation spaces function as a tool to preserve white plantation land ownership, tax-free, right? So you just passing down that wealth to your to your family, and that wealth is staying in that family, right? Think any plantation that's still under, I think many, if not most, are still under family ownership, right? Right. Even the little cornball that's running the Historic Preservation Society, like nobody likes that dude, right? Him too, like that Winslow dude, yeah, right. Okay, so yeah, tax free, right? And restrict access to the land. In the past, black folks either utilized or owned, right? In short, preservation is not just about preserving the memory of white supremacy. It is about actively and materially continuing white supremacy itself. So preservation, the concept that we have accepted, the concept that we have kind of been all raised to believe in, isn't really about preserving anybody's history and culture. It's about continuing to preserve white supremacy, and it's about historical memory. And I included that in the newsletter. I used that term, public memory and preservation. I hope Caroline didn't object to that, but that's what this conversation is largely about. Like what is preserved and what's not, and who has a monopoly on that. Shout out Adam Dombey, who has a monopoly on that, or who should and who shouldn't, right? No one should, right? So I wanted to throw that in there, just reflecting on Adam Dombey's book. Yeah, The False Cause, right? Shout out, let me give Adam Dombey some air horns. Because he always opens the newsletter. I don't know if he watches, but he always opens the newsletter. So I'm assuming he's engaged. All right. Good morning, Denise. Good morning, little mama. LQJ. Yeah, Donnelly. Yeah, thank you, Donnelly. Y'all, it's like AKA Jumanji. Do not get out your car. Do not get out. It literally, no, it's not Jumanji. Then it's Jurassic Park. Do not get out. If you go, I want to go to the wildlife. I want to see the rookery. Right? Shout out to my girl, Rebecca. Do not get out your car. Do not get out your Prius. Do not. I'm telling you, you're going to see vines that look like tree trunks, and boars, wild boars, those black fox squirrels. What species? How come they only on that? How come they only on Donnelly? I never seen that black fox squirrel anywhere on Wamala, anywhere else. I'm telling you, y'all, Donnelly is a mess. And when you look at the on a serious note, when you look at how Donnelly, it's supposed to be a wilderness preserve, much like some of these plantations, and you probably could argue Call, even though it's a county park, but a lot of the wilderness preserves, they have a lot of they're basically ways for people to avoid paying taxes, and it's a loophole thing that's disguised with drakes and mallards. I don't know how to say it, but it's not just about wilderness preserves and shit like that. Yeah, don't get out your car. Be the two kids in the first Jurassic Park who tried to stay in the Jeep. Stay in your Jeep. All right. Okay, let's go do a quick perusal. Is that a word? Of the local headlines. Again, I read this article. I sent it to Caroline this morning. I don't want her to have to feel burdened by discussing it, but I did read it. So it says preservation standouts. This is the front page of the Post and Courier. If y'all saw me tweet last night, you saw that stupid ass Nancy Mace Panda story dominating everything. Her comms team is fucking husky. It's just strong, brolic. That's the word I'm looking for. Her fucking comms team is brolic, right? Like they just put this shit, and they want the clicks. They don't care if they're hate clicks or anything. They want the clicks. 10 minutes to Caroline. 10 minutes, y'all. If you came here for Caroline, 10 minutes. 8:30. 8:30. We got you. Oh, that was my daddy. That was yesterday. Shout out to my pops. Right. All right. Well, I talked to Left Twist yesterday. She's like, you talked to your dad? Oh, did he talk about that Texas bus trip? I'm like, yeah. She was weird. She's like, yeah. She said, I'm never coming on. I'm like, I know, Ma. I know. My mom is I'm gonna get back to what we was doing. My mom was the kind of mom that used to duck whenever I had speakerphone on. She didn't want nobody to know she was around. It's just weird. She's weird. All right. Anyway, preservation. So this is the front headline. So last night, the Nancy Mace team, they posted this panda story. So I was like, if they post that panda story on the front page, I'm gonna be pissed. And I said above the fold, but they didn't put it above the fold. It is on the front page though, as I knew it would be, talking about some panda diplomacy. Stupid, dumb shit. I'm telling you, I'm gonna start tallying how many Mace articles versus how many Clyburn articles make it into the Post and Courier, and how many of those are front page stories. All right, so yeah, this is whole preservation propaganda. Maura Hogan wrote this, just so y'all know more. It's, you know what, we do need to start talking about influential like couples or whatever, right? I think like or couples like, okay, so like y'all taught me, Anna Marks told me that Jennifer Berry Hawes, that was her husband, Alan Hawes, who was the photojournalist who captured all those images at MUSC of the pandemic, which I ain't gonna lie, it did change the way I looked at that piece afterwards. Because again, my biggest criticism of JBH is that she kind of luxuriates in pain. Like she only hones in on trauma and not the source of the trauma, right? And so I guess I looked at it a little bit differently. Like, okay, it makes sense that her husband would capture trauma, but I think he did it respectfully. I think he did it tastefully. And I think what he's doing is important. I think what Jennifer Berry Hawes does is important to a degree. But anyway, so there's that relationship. So we have an award-winning, I believe Pulitzer Prize award-winning journalist in Jennifer Berry Hawes, married to Alan Hawes. Well, Maura Hogan is the spouse of Scott Watson, who works for the city. So I think that's important to point out when we read our news, like who's connected to who. That being said, I've never seen Maura like do anything icky or anything like that. I just think it's it's a helpful dynamic. And like you think about how people get certain positions and stuff. I mean, some stuff helps. Knowing certain people helps, right? Right. If you're coming from the New York metro area, you want to come down here and be a culture, art and culture writer. It might help that you know. That's it. But I don't. Again, not impugning her integrity. Good morning, everybody. Pandas and monkeys, right? I'm telling you, she's a veritable Dora the Explorer. There, that girl. What up, Joy? Joy, we gotta talk about your campaign. Get on the same page. And then if Michelle chimes in too, we need to like. We don't have. I'm just now random as fuck because I got ADHD. 6 minutes to Caroline. We don't have the type of ballot where like we don't have like the kind of ballot that where candidates can kind of run as groups. Y'all know what I'm talking about. If you lived in other areas like Camden, New Jersey, South Jersey, there are times where like candidates can run together like as a coalition. We don't have that here, and I know that Joy's running for school board, and I'm contemplating some things. But I think that if a Michelle, a Joy, me, and whomever steps forward, that's within the community, all kind of like get on the same page from a communication standpoint, I think that'd be dope. And that being said, I know people want to. I don't want to like. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like. Yeah, we need to have a power lunch. Can it be like real ratchet though? I don't want it to be stuff. If I don't want to wear any stuffy stuff. But yeah, I think we need to get on the same page, but I don't want to remove y'all's agency too. But I think there needs to be some level of coordination. One thing I did whenever I used to talk about running for mayor or running for city council, I always said that it doesn't help if it's just me running, right? If there was like 1 to 2 other candidates, that can help change and shift the balance of power that much. At least that's 2 votes and 2 strong voices and 2 strong leaders, or 2 or 3 or however many. But I think that there should be a level of coordination if I don't have that, right? But hopefully we inspire some other people to run campaigns, whether it be city council, school board. Hopefully we'll encourage people like that. And I think coordination will show that. Yeah, I'll leave it there because I know I'm gonna make if I run, wink wink, I'm gonna make some noise. All right. Yeah. Okay, so that's the front page. School choice. I read this article too. Debate gets underway for school choice bill. Joy, didn't know if you had any thoughts. Not trying to put you on the spot. Keep lifting up your name. But Libby's on the beat. Libby Stanford's on the beat. You know, if it's an education lab, you know Libby wrote it. So debate gets underway for school choice bill. Proposal could expand opportunity statewide. And that's exactly how that article was written. It was written to be purely favorable about school choice and to just present that as the only, as the option. So I'm gonna leave it there. Front page of the state newspaper. All right. I'm looking at the clock. I got 4 minutes. All right. Insurance reps asked to justify school mental health policy. Have not read this. Right. Then we talked about Dirty Myrtle, that Dirty Myrtle news yesterday. We just talked about it. We did not watch anything or review it. But police chief speaks about mass violation at South Carolina airport. Remember, there was like a threat made by law enforcement saying that they had to wear, if masks were mandated for law enforcement at the Myrtle Beach airport, that they would resist. I guess they would resign, much like the NYPD cops. Right? All right. Here, South Carolina health officials push school COVID test to stay policy. COVID test to stay policy. So SC health officials are pushing for that. Another article that, see how I'm just going to say, how they write about education is completely different. Not apples to apples at all. Completely different though. So that's the front page of those stories right there. Let's take a look at the digital. Let's do this. WLTX. Yeah. Take back the city. Look at Brienne. What up, Alvin? What up, Steven? How you feeling? Good morning. Yeah, Alvin need to run for city council. Y'all tell him that. Tell him in chat. Say, Alvin, run for city council. Because somebody else might be running for mayor. Somebody might be. All right. So, I see WLTX is, okay, let's watch this because we got 2 minutes till Caroline. Let's watch this real quick. It's Cecil.
Claflin University.
It's Cecil. I'm going to try to get him on a live stream. I'm going to try. This dude is mad tech savvy too. Mad tech savvy. Like, seriously. Let's watch this. Watch it.
Was recently awarded a $500,000 grant by Getty Images. The money will allow the school to create a digital archive of thousands of photographs. News 19's Nigel Hood tells us more.
During my lifetime, I used mostly film, so...
The GOAT. The GOAT. Living legend. Living legend. We taking for granted. Him, Harvey, Miss Barbara Gathers. There's a bunch we taking for granted.
All of the archives we have here, mostly so, are in film.
Cecil Williams is the Director of Historic Preservation at Claflin University. With the help of staff members and interns at Claflin, Williams will digitize the photos. Among
the film that we have digitized that will be available for Getty is this picture of Claflin University students marching.
I also want to say I met, when I worked for Black Lives Matter, we took a trip to his museum, his self-made museum. And we met his wife, too. His wife ain't no slouch either. She's a big leader with the NAACP. Let me go ahead and we'll go back to this.
For freedom, justice, and equality.
We'll go back to this Claflin grant situation, but I want to make sure I'm on time for Caroline. Let's start the meeting. Let's see where the video opens up. Let's just get it ready. Yeah, field trip. We got to do it. Little mama. My mouse is acting up, y'all. Y'all don't understand. Let me see. Oh. It's been doing this all morning. Oh, my God. I cannot talk to her with the video in front of me. That's not going to work. Let me see. Hold on, Caroline. I literally have to inch it over. It's acting stupid. It's really, damn. All right, let me make sure I set up my camera. All right. Let me make sure I set up my mic. Cool. Let me see OBS. Let me see. Oh, no. Yep, don't want to do that. Hold up. Streamlabs, gotcha. Admit her. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna come off mute. How you doing?
Hey, can you hear and see me okay?
I can. Let me just go ahead and switch to full screen. I'm gonna give you, I know you can't see me on Zoom, but I'm gonna go ahead and I know you can't hear the sound effects, but I'm gonna go ahead and play you some applause. Y'all, thumbs up in the chat. Thumbs up in the chat if y'all can hear us both. You look marvelous. You look great.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not.
It was a rush to the finish line this morning, but yeah.
Story of my life. I'm glad that it's not just me. Also, I'm not rate the room, but I'm gonna rate the room, y'all. If y'all don't know that account, go to Twitter. Mm-hmm. You're doing really good. I'm loving the book selection behind you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Now, look, I don't have because I'm multitasking. I have two screens up, two monitors, but I don't have the stuff that we talked about. We're just gonna roll with. I'm on board with whatever you want to talk about. But go ahead and everyone's giving me thumbs up. Go ahead and just introduce yourself to the public.
Sure. So good morning, y'all. I am just so excited to be here this morning. I was really honored when Mika first reached out to me back in December to be on the show. I'm Caroline Grego. I'm a visiting assistant professor in the history department at Queen's University of Charlotte. So I am in the Carolinas, though, close to the border, but not quite in South Carolina. I'm getting there. But yeah, I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. And I sort of did my education in different parts of the country. Did a PhD in history at the University of Colorado Boulder. I finished that in May of 2019. That's actually where Dr. Ashley Lawrence Sanders is currently teaching.
Oh, I can't. Shout out Ashley. Hey, Ashley, you next.
Yeah. We got some of the Colorado connection there. The Colorado-South Carolina pipeline, apparently. I got my PhD there and then got this teaching job out in Charlotte. And I was so excited to move back because, I grew up in South Carolina. My family and my friends are there. And of course, my research is on South Carolina too. As you said, I tend to look at sort of these early decades of Jim Crow, especially sort of in the Lowcountry and the Charleston area. So sort of end of Reconstruction until about 1930 or so is sort of the time period that I'm really kind of immersed in my own research and writing. But I also want to say that if you're going to study the Lowcountry, you got to study all of it, right? You can't understand what happens in 1880 if you don't understand what's happening before 1860, and take that as far back as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't understand what's happening around us now too, if you don't sort of learn about this era as well. You talk about history on your show all the time, and help show exactly how it's connected to the way Charleston is now, right?
Yeah. That's why I thought there are like a number of reasons why I felt like how I choose. I don't really have an official or formal process for how I choose who I want to talk to, but I think your roots, the fact that also, I think for me, historians, and this is like, I think I felt this way about Adam Dombey. Historians are not just old white men, right? And I know you're white, but like, I love the fact that you're like a younger, fresher, and no shade, I'm not ageist at all, but like, I love the fact that it's just like a different approach or a different approach to a conversation when you center a different voice that's just not the same people with the same old ideas. And I believe you bring a fresh approach, but also your roots here are firmly planted here in South Carolina. And I think that that's really important for people to see and hear a different perspective, and to hear you as a white person talk about the importance of studying Jim Crow. To me, that speaks volumes. Can you? I know you just mentioned why you got into that, but to talk more about that, like what intrigues you the most.
Sure. So, I mean, there are a lot of reasons why. I mean, the number one thing is that I feel like as a white South Carolinian, you're under basically like a civic obligation to understand and learn more about South Carolina's history. I feel like you see a lot with and you see this some with older white South Carolinians too, where they try to claim, well, how would I understand? I'm white. I've never faced discrimination myself. How am I supposed to know about all this? It's like, well, just try. The books are out there. They could listen to your show.
Yeah,
there's so many different ways that people can learn about this history and think about these deep connections to the past. And pretending like you don't know is not an excuse, right?
Yeah.
It might be if you're still young and growing up, and let's say you're raised in a really conservative white household or something like that. Sure, fine. It takes time. It's not as though we grow up in a society that automatically teaches us all this stuff. I mean, you talked a lot about how there's actually a real concentrated effort to make sure that school children in South Carolina don't learn about this kind of history, right?
Yeah.
That's the product of actual campaigns, right?
Yeah. I think that's it. Like, I want to show people that the omission or the whitewashing is a deliberate effort. These are campaigns. These are concerted, and we're seeing that with I don't know if you've tuned into like local, I know you visit the live stream often, but like city council, you're seeing people really just are really wedded to this whitewashed version of Charleston in South Carolina. And they won't acknowledge the fact that it's how they arrived at that conclusion was the byproduct of a very a concerted campaign. All right, so I did open my phone. I opened up our email on the phone, so I got the bulleted items there. But out of all the bulleted items, you just jump in. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, I know you said that you wanted to sort of start with some sort of lesser known Black history.
Yes. And I saw the postscript email. So let's get into it. I think this is really interesting because I don't know. I didn't Google. I wanted you to teach me something new.
Okay, so you're coming in fresh.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I was trying to think about sort of somebody I could talk about that would bring together a lot of the other things we're going to talk about. The sort of the history of historic preservation in Charleston, why the sort of real estate landscape looks the way it does today, how this connects to history, and I feel like this is kind of all brought together by a man named Quash Stevens. So Mika, you let me know if anybody in the chat recognizes that name, because maybe they do.
I'm going to type the question. You
might recognize, people, whether they're connected to their families or communities or whatever. Just as a quick content note, though, Quash Stevens was born into slavery, and I always try to provide sort of a little, content warning. I think you usually call it just straight up trigger warning. So we will be talking about that. I'll have sort of a brief mention of something sort of connected to a sexual assault. It'll happen right at the beginning, then we'll be done. But I felt like you seem to give warnings about that on your show, right?
Thank you for that. And I just dropped in the chat, content warning, sexual assault. Also, the enslavement of Black bodies is something that we need to start saying that more with too. So I appreciate, look at you. Yo, your brain, yo. I love that you no, seriously, you're very attentive. So I appreciate that. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, sure. So this is a historic figure that I encountered while doing research for my book, which I'll just touch on briefly. It's about the deadliest hurricane in South Carolina history that hits in 1893. And so in looking through documents connected to that, I ran across this figure who hasn't been written about much, but again, helps bring these connections to the op-ed even, and other things we'll be chatting about later. So I thought I would open up with him just so that folks can hear a little bit more about this part of Black history in Charleston in sort of the late 1800s and early 1900s. Let's talk about Quash Stevens. So Quash Stevens was born either in 1840 or 1843. As with many people born into slavery, their enslavers didn't really bother writing down those details all the time necessarily. So I don't have a good answer either way. And he was born to an enslaved woman whose name, unfortunately, I haven't been able to find, and her enslaver. Which, historians, there's no other way to call it but sexual assault, right? There's that power dynamic there, right? And his enslaver was named Elias Vanderhorst. Now, here's the thing. Y'all know the street in Charleston, you pronounce it Vandross Street. And that's, how you're supposed to say it. But the Vanderhorst family that the street is named after pronounced it Vanderhorst, which
Wow.
is odd to me. But
I say
anyway.
all those names wrong. Hugie Street. I used to call it Hugger. I don't know what I used to call it in high school, but yeah, go ahead. Thank you for breaking that down for some people.
Yeah. I didn't want folks being like, oh, she doesn't know how to pronounce Vandross. I do. It's just different here. So Quash was born to Elias Vanderhorst and an enslaved woman. And he was himself kept enslaved until after the Civil War. And he was born on a rice labor camp or plantation. I tend to use the phrase labor camp if we're talking about it in the sort of post-Civil War era, just because I think that more accurately reflects what they were, right? These were forced labor camps where labor was exploited and extracted from enslaved people of African descent. So he was born on the Ashepoo River on Roundo. And here's the thing about, rice labor camps, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers know this, but rice labor camps were one of the last places you'd want to be as an enslaved person in the antebellum South. They were immensely dangerous and deadly places because you were living in this swampy, marshy environment with really bad water quality. Mm-hmm. You had sort of a higher level of exposure to mosquito-borne diseases like malaria. And so these were very unpleasant and horrible places to live. And the work that was done in the rice fields in South Carolina was also extraordinarily difficult. Because you're slogging through water often to tend the rice plants, which of course needed water over them at strategic points in their growth cycle, right? Yeah. So yeah, this is where Quash was born, like many enslaved people in the Lowcountry. Right? So he was born there, and Quash, by the way, is a West African day name. And West Africans, a variety of countries. So I'm not saying West African to like paper over the entirety of West Africa. Yeah.
I gotcha.
Have names that were assigned to sort of specific days of the week. And Quash is a West African day name that means Friday. And so while we don't know his mother's name, that does make us wonder is, did she perhaps have parents who were born in West Africa and forcibly trafficked through the Middle Passage to South Carolina, right? We can sort of wonder whether she's trying to sort of create this connection between her son and her own sort of, traditional homelands in West Africa by naming him that. So, names in the Lowcountry are important. They can tell us a lot.
Right. People are still stuck on the you say it's supposed to be pronounced Vandross?
It's supposed to be pronounced Vanderhorst.
Oh, it is. Oh, but it was pronounced Vandross.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotcha. I dropped a Luther Vandross reference in the chat, but we got you. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No. The names, like going back to your point, the names matter. This lineage matters. And I'm telling people also to pay particular attention to your use of language, which is something that I really do love the fact that you are mindful of this as well, not calling them plantations not calling them plantations or gardens. They're labor camps, forced labor camps. But yeah, continue. I don't want to interrupt you talking about,
No, I can start to monologue too much. So I'm going to try to find moments to pause. So I'm not just going on.
What intrigued you about him though? Like this figure, like, is he lost to, did he have contributions?
So here's how I encountered him. So let's see. So what happens to Quash? He grows up as a young man in slavery during the Civil War. He's sent off with his white half-brother as his enslaved servant when his white half-brother is sent off to fight for the Confederacy.
That's common too. That's common. Yeah. That was common.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He served for the Charleston Light Dragoons. And here's an interesting thing. Quash wasn't the only enslaved servant there. Mrs. Septima Clark's father was another enslaved servant, also serving a white man in the Charleston Light Dragoons.
Wow. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it made, this, I assume they must have known each other. And this was sort of, an experience that I'm sure their children, including Mrs. Clark, must have sort of carried with them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Cool.
So after the Civil War, and this is sort of where I, learned about Quash. After the Civil War, we don't really know how Quash met emancipation. We just know that he was emancipated. And this was after getting, sort of passed around among his white, and I feel like it's really difficult to use words like brother here, because of course they didn't recognize it in any sort of meaningful material way, even as they do things that suggest this connection, right? Right. So, for example, after the Civil War, you can read the letters of the Vanderhorst family at the South Carolina Historical Society. There is an enormous sort of collection of the Vanderhorst family papers there, as there are for many of these enslaver families in the Lowcountry, right? You go in there and you are just like surrounded by these papers. And as historians, one thing that a lot of us are interested in doing is trying to figure out, okay, well, we know that these papers are written from the perspective of white supremacy, from the perspective of the enslaver. But what can we learn from them about African Americans, and try to sort of regain their experiences from these papers by sort of reading them in a way that their creators absolutely wouldn't want us to have read them in. But still, that's where you have to go to try to recover some of these stories, right? It's not the only place to go. But we can't ignore it as a source base. We have to figure out how to analyze it in a way that we can get something. I
think whenever I go to like either the South Carolina State Room in the public library or to a place like the Historical Preservation, like any building, when I see just all of this, these white families, the planter class, and like you said, extensive like artifacts and papers and documents, I always think, well, what's missing? Like, do they even care? Like, where are the Black people? Like, they didn't just. The crops didn't raise themselves, like the money didn't make itself either. So I guess it sparked your curiosity about like, what's missing. Even when we talk about when we get to the op-ed part, like, what's missing, what's not included, right? Yeah.
So in one of those letters, for example, Quash's father writes after the Civil War, he says, "I hope Quash will remain faithful." Oh. And there is so much in that phrase, isn't there? It shows you that, first of all, that his white family, for lack of a better word, even after the end of slavery, aren't thinking about what they can do for Quash. They're still thinking about what they can get from him, right? Ooh. That's what's on their minds. They don't care what Quash wants or what he might want to do now that he's free. They're instead just thinking about how they can continue to bind Quash to them, right? And so they offer Quash a choice. They say, "Quash, you can go back to Roundeau, the rice labor camp where he was born, or you can go to Kiwa Island." Because Kiwa Island some part of it had been in the possession of the Vanderhorst family since the 1770s.
Since didn't they get that from the indigenous, like for some shells and beads or something? I don't remember, but anyway. I might be thinking about Manhattan. I don't know if it's the same.
Yeah. You're thinking about that, but that said, Kiwa Island is named after the Kiowa people, and the thing about the Kiowa people is they actually originally lived up roundabout Charlestown Landing area, where Charleston was first established in 1670 before they moved it to the peninsula in 1680. But the Kiowa moved down to Kiowa Island to like escape the English colonizers,
of course,
to put some space between them.
Oh wow. Okay. I didn't mean to deter you, but okay, that's good to know.
No, it's. I think that's another thing too, is that talking about Indigenous history in the Lowcountry is also very important. Because very often, it's not acknowledged. It's viewed as something that like happened a very long time ago that isn't even worth bringing up in these conversations about slavery, but it absolutely is, because a lot of Indigenous people in the Lowcountry were enslaved too, well into the 1700s. Yep. Yeah. So anyway, they say, "We'll send you to Kiwa Island to like lease our property there and look after it for us." And Quash said, I'll go to Kiowa. And that may be because he didn't want to go back to Roundeau, right? That was where he was born into slavery. He might have had bad associations with it. There's no further mention of his mother, so perhaps she had died there as well under some circumstances that we just don't know about, right? So he decides to go to Kiowa. And the thing is that, Kiowa is today largely a private island, except for the public beach down on the south end. And now it's this sort of, we'll talk about Kiwa Island a little bit later in its current iteration. Yeah. Because that's where the op-ed comes in.
Yes, exactly.
There's a lot we can say about private sea islands.
Oh, yes.
So Kiwa Island is where he's sent. And he then settles there. And again, he's leasing this from them. He does not own Kiwa Island. He is signing year by year contracts with the Vanderhorst to sort of run Kiwa Island.
Oh, okay.
And Kiwa Island at the time had about 50 African Americans living on it, sort of in little, family units around the island in specific parts. And there, Quash begins to raise a family. He must have gotten married sometime in 1865. So immediately after he was emancipated, he must have made that marriage official. Unfortunately, I don't know the name of his first wife.
Wow.
This is something else that unfortunately I just can't find.
Yeah.
And they had several children. They had 4 children, Eliza, William, Annie, and Laura, born from 1865 to 1873. Sometime before 1880, unfortunately, his first wife passes away. Again, I'm not sure when, but by 1880 in the census, which Quash appears in, he described himself as a widower. So she must have died somewhere in there. Soon thereafter, he gets remarried to a woman named Julia Gibbs, who was from Charleston. She was also born into slavery, and she had actually gotten her degree from the Hampton Institute in Virginia.
Okay, Hampton University.
Yeah, she was from their first graduating class in 1871.
Oh, wow.
That was, of course, established as a school for freed people to provide an education to formerly enslaved folks. So yeah, he marries Julia, and he continues to live on this island, but he's also always having to answer to the white Vanderhorst who lived predominantly in Charleston.
Ah, okay.
And this is where I learned about him, because he wrote letters back to his white brother and his wife, Adele, for years.
Oh, wow.
And the Vanderhorst kept about a couple dozen of those letters. And those are in their papers at the South Carolina Historical Society.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So these letters, go ahead.
No. Go.
Okay. So these letters, it seems pretty clear to me that he must have written them a letter once every couple weeks. So the fact is that they only saved a very small percentage of those, because he is on Kiowa between 1865 and 1900. He is there for a very long time.
Oh, wow. I never knew any of this. This is mind blowing. Okay.
Yeah. So he's there writing letters, and you can see this fraught relationship, right? He's always sort of asking the Vanderhorst for more information, to communicate with him more often. And it's very clear they just don't, they don't really care. They're not really listening. They're just interested in him continuing to sort of run and operate this property. They predominantly sort of raised cattle on the island. The tenant farmers grew some Sea Island cotton. They grew, some vegetables and fruit, like berries and things like that too. But yeah, you can read in these letters, and you can see this, that Quash is always asking for more, right? And they're never providing it. And over the course of those years, a lot happens. First of all, his white father dies in 1874. His brother dies in 1881, actually in a hunting accident on Kiwa Island.
Oh, wow. His white brother. Yeah.
The white brother.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Wow.
What happened is the brother went out hunting with a shotgun that had a faulty trigger, and Quash warned him about this.
They didn't listen. Is that the lecture title? They never listened to Quash. Go ahead.
They didn't. Quash warned him about it, and he didn't listen. And sure enough, it killed him.
Oh, wow.
And I think there was actually a little inquest into that death, because there were some questions about the circumstances around that, which is itself kind of interesting.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, so some other things we can have. For example, one of his sons goes and gets his degree at Claflin University. Okay. And he comes back and helps his father, Quash, sort of run things on the island. He's a blacksmith, very, very talented. It's clear that he, really wanted to sort of put his education to use in helping his father Quash, make things better at Kiwa. But the trouble is that things just keep getting worse.
Oh, wow.
And they keep getting worse because of the hurricane in 1893, which devastates the island. Kiwa was entirely covered in water because of that.
Wow.
Submerged fully by this storm surge. So that just makes things worse. It makes things more difficult. Another thing that happens is that his sister-in-law, his white sister-in-law, Adele, has a son who is, for lack of a better phrase, a pain in the ass.
Love it.
He is. He's a complete pain in the ass. Yeah. Nobody seems to like him very much, not his own mother even, really. And this guy takes it into his head that he's sick of Quash running things and acting like he's running things on Kiwa. And he wants to sort of establish control over Quash. And Quash isn't having it. He gets increasingly frustrated by the attempts of this white man who would, in other circumstances, be his nephew, trying to boss him around. And so through the 1890s, you see this tension playing out there. And in fact, in 1900, Quash threatens to leave. He says, I've done my best over the past 40 years to, serve this family. And you can tell he doesn't know what else to do.
Right.
He's really almost done. And Adele, his white sister-in-law, convinces him to stay for another year. But in that year, this pain in the ass nephew picks a fight with Quash. He threatens to sue him over some cattle that Quash sold. He just finds all these ways to get at him.
Oh, wow.
And in 1901, Quash says, I'm out. Like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Hold on. Pause right there. Yep. Black people in the chat, can y'all relate? Like, I don't need this damn job. Fuck it. I'll figure it out. Anyway, keep going, Caroline.
Yeah. He says, he's done. And so he and his son, William, buy a piece of property on John's Island. And they had a lot of connections to John's Island. So Quash's wife, Julia, for example, had worked as a school teacher on Kiwa and as a school teacher on John's Island, too, for African-American children there. She ran Sunday schools as well. And so John's Island was this sort of natural fit for them. They already had a lot of connections to the place. And it's right over the creek from Kiwa, right?
Right there.
Yeah. It's right there. So they settle on John's Island. And we don't, of course, know what Quash's emotions were. But they moved there, and his son and his wife, Lilla, who is from Colombia, have 4 grandsons. And you can sort of imagine that Quash is maybe trying to put this behind him, trying to enjoy his time with his family, trying to make a go of it with his son. And, they have these grandchildren on John's Island. You hope that it was a better and happier time for him. It's hard to say that, right? We can't know. But you hope that it was, right?
Yeah.
And Quash ends up dying of heart failure in 1910. So he got to enjoy 9 years with his family on John's Island on that property. And he was actually buried at the Centenary Methodist Episcopal Church's graveyard, which is one of those big graveyards that's there have just been some articles published about how those have been sort of covered up by private property.
Yeah, threatened by development. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's been all too often that story's kind of happening all over the place. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
So a lot of interesting things happen from there, though. Julia continues to teach on John's Island through the 1910s. And you know who else was teaching on John's Island starting in 1916? Septima Clark.
Wow.
Gets her career started there. So I do really think that Julia, Quash's wife, must have met Septima Clark.
Especially given the fact that Quash and Septima's Septima's father had this similar path. Oh, wow. This is amazing. Yeah.
And I would have to imagine that Julia Stevens, Quash's wife, might have been sort of a mentor figure in some ways because she'd been teaching for a long time, and they definitely overlapped. And there's no way that two African-American women school teachers, both on Johns Island, teaching at the same time, didn't know each other.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And now my mind is going to much later, but like Mamie Garvin Fields, because she was born in 1888 and she taught on James Island in the 1930s. That's much later, but still. She must have seen that coming up, though. Yeah. She had to have seen these women, perhaps on these sea islands, also educated. This is amazing. Oh my! Let me play some air horns because
I think it's important too, because one of the things that's that you can tell that's been frustrating about trying to find out more about Quash Stevens is that there are all these Black women in this story too that have even fewer records about them, right? That are even sort of harder to find out about.
Yes, and I'm lifting my finger on it. Let me tell you, and again, this is why I would shout out to everyone who joined me a week ago today at the book club. We read The Trouble with White Women, which talks about that counter history of white feminism. But what I wanted to do, and I didn't send an email out to folks yet, but I suggested the book A Black Woman's History of the United States, because that book talks about what you just named right there, how it's so hard because Black women, unfortunately, Black women were documented very differently than their male counterparts because and also like their children being freed. If you had if the enslaver impregnated one of the enslaved, that daughter would have to pretty much remain in bondage, whereas the man might have an outcome more like Quash, where you give him more freedom, or you might be emancipated upon your father's death. It's crazy how they did not document these women at all, and even you can't even find out certain names and causes of death of the women. It's not documented at all. Yeah. And I try to. Historians have written a lot about how to approach this, especially, there's such incredible scholarship by Black women historians talking about this. Yes.
And so, there's some things that you can do in your writing as a historian to make sure that you're acknowledging this. So, for example, when I talk about Quash's mother, I note that her name was not something the Vanderhorst bothered to record, right? It's not that I'm not saying her name in the text because I'm ignoring it. It's because that record isn't there. Right? Like there's ways of just not sort of rendering them completely nameless. They weren't nameless. They were deliberately unnamed, right? And there's a difference there. Yeah. In terms of how these archives were created, and how who created them deemed what was worthy of remembrance, right? Yeah. And that's something, you have to sort of struggle with and think about as a historian, and make sure you sort of name that when that happens. Yeah.
Thank you for doing that, though. I want to lift that up again. Just thank you for not just naming things, but actually kind of living or practicing your professed values when it comes to things like that, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Julia Gibbs teaches on Johns Island. She eventually moves to a house in Charleston and teaches there too until her death in, I think, 1931 or 1932. And she was very active in a lot of causes in Charleston, not only as a teacher, but she also helped to fundraise and found the only Black operated hospital in Charleston, the Hospital and Training School for Nurses on Cannon Street.
Let me ask you this. Is her name spelled like the Gibbs Museum, or is it spelled without an E?
Well, yeah, that's the funny thing. It's not. There is an E missing from it. But, I do have questions about that. I haven't yet been able to figure out sort of the circumstances of her childhood. I assume that she was enslaved because the Hampton Institute was deliberately for newly freed people. But I do have, I can find her in the census, and she says that both her parents were also born in Charleston, too. I'm not sure, but if the name Gibbs shows up in South Carolina, you can kind of assume there's some sort of connection to the powerful white enslaving family Gibbs in some way, perhaps, right?
Yeah. No, I appreciate you. I'm gonna definitely figure out a way to pay tribute to Julia's legacy, and also Quash. And maybe I can locate his grave. I don't know if you uncovered of his grave. You said what he was buried, where he was buried, but. Yeah,
I think it's in one of this, I should pull up the article about it. I do have here's the other sort of cool thing is that I have tried to find like pictures of them. I haven't yet been able to find a picture of Quash Stevens. I do have a picture that Julia is in. I don't know which of the two women she is in the photograph, but she's in it.
Oh, wow.
Can I share my screen? Would y'all like to see that?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, that's the first, air horns, first screen share from our interview. That's why I love Zoom.
Yeah, hold on. I think you might need to enable my screen sharing.
Shoot. Okay. That's right. I have you, let me see, event sharing options. All right. One participant, all participants who can share. So, let's just do all. All right. Try now.
Yeah. Okay, great. I can.
Okay.
All right. So, Julia attended a reunion of the Hampton Institute.
We don't see it though.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were sharing. Okay. Gotcha. Now we get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Julia attended a reunion for the Hampton Institute in 1919. And she is one of these two women here. And I don't know which one.
Damn. Yeah. But this is great though. This is awesome. Oh man, I just love seeing the bodies, the people. Yeah. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. She traveled up from Charleston with a woman who was, I assume, must have been one of her best friends and who was her roommate at the Hampton Institute. And so yeah, it's one of these two is Mrs. Julia Gibbs Stevens, because she did use her maiden name as like her middle name.
Yes.
I don't know which one, but one of those two. And I'm sure that her friend also had a fascinating and interesting life too.
Yeah.
Whichever one.
Oh man, this is awesome. You bring so much to
powerful women.
Yeah, people were saying earlier. Someone made a comment earlier about how like you must be a great professor. I think you are. You already showed us. I feel like we got a little free little course just now, and we're not done. But this is amazing. Thank you.
Well, this is actually the first time I've talked about Quash Stevens in this story really anywhere. All this stuff is in my book manuscript, but that's not out yet. I haven't given a lecture about this. I know that Quash Stevens isn't well known. I don't think he's been written about very much by historians. So y'all are getting, I've never had a chance to talk about this. And I'm so glad that this is where I get to talk about it first. So I feel like this is the most appreciative and sort of analytical audience I could have for this too,
absolutely.
For sure.
And yeah, the dismount is going to be definitely talking about your future projects and books and things like that, because just trust and believe we will be like one of your biggest fans here, and I'm excited. Okay, that's great.
Julia.
That's Julia and Quash. All right.
Yeah. So what ends up happening with some of this other family members? Unfortunately, Quash's son William also dies sometime between 1910 and 1920. I don't know when. That's something else I don't have details on. So this means that his wife and Quash's grandsons, their children, are sort of adrift. And Lila decides to move back to Columbia and moves in with her parents, with their grandsons, with her children, her sons. And here's the thing. When I saw where her parents lived, I was like, Marion Street. I'm pretty sure Majeska Monte Simpkins' house was also on Marion Street.
Ooh.
And yeah, her parents live right next door to Majeska Monte Simpkins.
Get out of here. The intersection of all these people.
Yep. They moved to Columbia sometime in, right around 1920 or so. And Majeska Monte Simpkins moves into that house in 1932. But based on census information from 1930 and 1940, I know that, Quash's grandsons were living next door to Majeska Monte Simpkins when she lived in that house as well. So yeah, I just think that's really interesting, especially because, Quash's grandsons, 2 of them stay in Columbia and work there, and 2 more of them end up moving north. And one of them, Harold, goes on to have a really illustrious career. He went to Benedict College for his undergraduate and met his wife, Ella Clyde Myers, while she was also getting her degree there. And Harold moves to New York, and he actually ends up having a career as a lawyer and a judge. And he does a lot of work on like fair labor practices and labor law.
What?
Which also makes me think of Mrs. Simpkins, because, she cared so much about economic and racial justice. And so it does almost make you wonder if like he knew and spoke with her and saw her legacy, and that sort of helped inspire him to work on fair labor practices and in labor law, right? I don't know.
Yeah, even if it's not directly, it's hard to. So even with me, like I'm not saying I'm not Jessica, I'm not Julia, I'm not. Yep. But I want to model at least something to where it inspires someone. Maybe it's not Twitch or podcast, maybe it's something else, but like I know for a fact that there has to be an effect or some sort of shift culturally being initiated by these behemoths, these historical behemoths. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so that's another thing where I don't know for sure, but they're living next door to each other. You know, they're moving in these similar circles and everything like that. So yeah, Quash's family goes on to have these influences and these impacts all around South Carolina. And as for what happens to Kiwa Island, and this will sort of bring us to, you know, talking about the op-ed and everything like that, what happens to Kiwa Island is that pain in the ass nephew ends up running it into the ground.
Oh my! Sorry, one of the comment is Kia called it earlier. Yep. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he chases off Quash, right? There's sort of no other way of describing it, right? He does everything he can to make life unpleasant for Quash on Kiowa, and he succeeds. In theory, he gets what he wants, but then he struggles to do anything that causes Kiwa to turn a profit.
How you fumble that bag though? How you fumble that? Anyway, okay.
But he does. He tries all kinds of stuff. You can see like in newspaper ads, he's putting out ads to try to desperately find some rich white northerner who will like rent it as like a winter getaway and stuff. He's trying. It doesn't work.
Wait, he's a little bit ahead of his time though when it comes to wooing developers to come. Anyway, go.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of the predecessor of that. And what happens is he dies in 1943. Unsurprisingly, he never got married. He never had a kid. And what happens is the executor of his will ends up sort of being forced to take over Kiowa. But he dies in 1950, and his heirs sell it to the CC Royal Lumber Company. And they don't do much there. They timber some parts of Kiowa. They build like a small beachside resort on part of it. And by this time, though, many of the African Americans, the 50 or so who had lived there in Quash's time, had already moved away.
Yeah.
And parts were chased off by, the Vanderhorsts, in part just, to go somewhere else to make a better living for themselves. All the many reasons why many African Americans were sort of compelled, forced to move away from the Sea Islands in the early 1900s.
Yeah. Right? So let me actually expand on that. Like, so there was like a concerted effort to push some of the Black populations away from the Sea Islands, at least in that area. We know, like, I know St. Helena and whatnot is a little bit different, but there was an effort. Wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's okay. In terms of Kiowa, it's definitely complicated. For me, it seems as though what happened was you had a white landlord who was unpleasant to work with, right? And so the question becomes, is it worth it to stay here? And for many of them, the answer was no, it was not worth it. They weren't making money. They had to enter into yearly contracts that squeezed a lot from them and gave very little back, right? And I mean, there is that question of like, well, is that they were deliberately forced? And I mean, I think the answer is yes. Like, there is no choice in that kind of labor exploitation, right? You're not given a set of options that are worth negotiating with after a certain point.
Yeah, and I want you to keep me honest here, but from what I've read in other books and whatnot, these contracts that sometimes it'd be lifetime contracts, or it's just slavery by another name. They would also they would contract like young kids who weren't literate. There are all types of ways that Black labor was exploited following the Civil War. It was just slavery by another name, and it was like even more harsh than sharecropping. Even though sharecropping is extraordinarily violent, those contracts were really tricky for people to navigate. Yeah.
I'm trying to find a set of quotes I have. So, and this takes us to St. Helena very briefly. I won't dwell on it too much, but. Oh my God, where is it?
Take your time.
On St. Helena Island, there were a series of interviews conducted with African Americans who had stayed, and then many who had moved to Harlem.
Wait. Say it again, because that's new.
Yeah, sure. So in the 1920s, a sociologist conducted interviews with African Americans who had moved away from St. Helena Island. And these interviews, you see them sort of explaining explicitly how and why they chose to move away. Oh my God. Okay. I'm trying to find where I have all these quotes stored because they're really interesting. Oh, I know who to search. Okay. That's how I'll get there.
You sound like me. That's exactly how my brain works.
Yeah. I mean, I figured that y'all would sort of be willing to put up with it while I found this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. So here we go. One man who left St. Helena in 1904 when he was 20 recalled that there were no jobs and that white merchants abused the credit system. He said work was scarce. You couldn't make a devilish lot. What you made, you couldn't hardly get anything from. The grocery man took it all. Another young woman, Rebecca, noted the harmful practices of white merchants on St. Helena. She said folks don't have any means of making money on the island. Another thing is this. When people start out to make a crop, a lot of them don't have enough money to buy seed. Well, they borrow money from one of the merchants on the islands. The merchants furnish them a little stuff to eat until the crop is made. Well, all this doesn't amount to much, but still sometimes people don't make enough money to pay for it if they don't make anything off the crop. What does the merchant do then? Well, before he loans any money, he takes a mortgage out on their land. And most of them are kind enough to let your debt run over, but most of them take your animal. And then what are you going to do? Like, how do you plow if you don't have your mule or cow or whatever? And they continue to name this, right? That this system is so exploitative. They say, well, what are you going to do next year if you don't have a mule? What are you going to eat if they take your cow or pig? That's the time when people get disgusted and discouraged and have to move. Wow. So yeah, exactly like what you're saying. And again, these are, African Americans from St. Helena Island talking exactly about how these systems, leave them with very little choice ultimately.
Right. Oh man, this is powerful. Oh my goodness. I think when I want to say thank you, I don't know how much more you want to get on this because I did want to segue to the article, but I think in my own janky, clunky way of segueing, but the I think when I talk about tourism specifically and placemaking, even though the places are already made, that the Quash story makes me think about Kiwa in a completely different way. And how many years, to recap before we pivot to the Washington Post, which I think also, like I said, it connected to this. How many years was Quash managing and maintaining Kiwa before
it? It was there from 1865 until 1901.
Good God. And it wow.
Yeah, he was there that whole time. And as far as I know, there isn't anything on Kiwa that commemorates him.
No, that's the L. That's of course there isn't.
And I mean, I don't know that for certain because of course Kiwa is private and the only part of it you can get onto is Beachwalker State Park.
My mama used to work on there. My mom used to work on there. I don't think there's no monument there. I'm gonna say, unless somebody keep me honest in the chat, I don't think it's there. But
I don't think there is. I mean, I think that the way that you can get onto Kiwa is they have the straw market or whatever that you can say you're going to, but I've never tried that. I want to though, because again, I want to be able to poke around a little bit to see maybe there is something about Quash there that I haven't been able to find through Google searches and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I mean, Kiwa was this, an island where African Americans lived well into the 1900s. And yeah, now it's entirely gone. And so, what happens after it gets bought by that lumber company in 1950 really does bring us up to the present day, because of course, in 1974, who buys it but Coastal Shores, Inc., right? For $17 million, they buy the entire island.
Wait, say that one more. Who buys it?
Yeah, Coastal Shores, Inc., which was a subsidiary of the Kuwait Investment Company.
What? And what year was this?
1974. Yeah.
Kuwaiti money?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wait, I did not. Hold up. My mind is like all kinds of. Wait a minute. So I'm up here talking about our relationship to Qatar and Doha, and they're building secret drones on John's Island. You mean to tell me history is repeating itself? That the Kuwaitis bought. I didn't. Y'all knew that. Everybody knew that, but me. Oh my goodness. Wait, in 1974, okay, keep going.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so 1974 is when Kiwa is purchased. And the company does a lot of things to prepare it to turn it into the resort island it is now, right? They sort of mowed down all of the remaining tenant farmer houses that existed there. And this included, and actually let me pull up another little picture for y'all real quick. I also have a picture of Quash's son and his wife and their house on Kiwa.
What?
And if you want to talk about historic preservation and a house that you wish had been preserved, can y'all see that?
Uh-huh.
That's a nice house, right?
Oh my God.
Wouldn't it be nice to preserve that one?
Look at the water behind. I'm almost about to cry because I go to the Cherry Point boat landing on Wamala. That's where I like to rest. Yeah. And like, that's what it looks like, a house just, oh my God. That's his wife on the steps?
Yep, that's Lila. And there's William.
Wow. How'd you find this? It's crazy.
Honestly, Google. There is.
Wow.
So what happened was, this is from a magazine from this I think this is from 1890. This is a magazine put out by the Hampton Institute, and the Hampton Institute liked to keep track of its graduates. And so they found out that Julia was on Kiwa, and they sent a journalist down there to speak with them about it. And they took this photograph and published it in their magazine to be like, yes, Julia Gibbs Stevens is still around doing all this great work on John's Island and on Kiwa as a teacher. And yeah, we got this picture. We don't have one of Quash, but we have one of his son and of Lila.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's his son though.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And this beautiful house they lived in.
So were there like a lot of Black people on Kiwa while Quash was there? Can we assume that, or
about 40 or 50?
Okay. And it wasn't really developed, right? The island probably wasn't developed, like, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was about sort of 1/3 of it was sort of fixed up for agriculture, and the rest of it was sort of, scrubby forest lands and things like that. So yeah.
This is amazing. I want to just say I'm giving you another round of applause, button. I know we're not done. I am gagging. I got a little litmus test in the chat. Whenever my friend Evelyn over here, whenever she don't know something, I know like it's really obscure, and if I don't know it, then she don't know it, and because Evelyn's like, come again, like Kuwait, and so the Kuwait connection just comes in the 70s, but so not only is Quash not really remembered or memorialized. Yeah. And he's not even a controversial figure. So like, I know Charleston always runs away from controversy, like Denmark.
Yeah, he's not.
He's not. He held it down. He kept it natural. And here come nephew, like mediocre white man. And this is incredible. Yeah, and imagine what we don't know about indigenous folks too. Like we don't know nothing.
Oh, yeah. So I mean, that's why these pieces of history are so precious when we can learn about them, right? Mm-hmm. When we do have this documentation to reconstruct these stories, I know that this is like meaningful and important stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like this matters. Lila and William there, like it's so incredible that we have this photograph of them. It means a lot.
Oh man, I appreciate you and your labor I know you said you just Google it, but you have to know what to Google. Like half the power of the search is knowing what to look for. And I want to say thank you so much for this. And while no one
to share it with y'all.
Yeah. And no one can give a person a sense of self. But when you see these images and you see Black bodies living, coming out of the Civil War. So thinking that, okay, I'm emancipated. I get to own this home, own this land, live here for the rest of my life, and know that was a promise that was broken over and over again. We couldn't even keep our 40 acres and a mule. We couldn't keep it, even if we did get it.
So we have this. And I, from what I've read, it sounds as though Quash and Julia lived in a house that looked very much like this. But when Kiwa is bought in 1974, all of these structures are torn down.
Oh, man.
They're destroyed. They don't exist anymore, unfortunately. I do know what part of Kiwa Islands these houses were on. They're on sort of the north side, the marsh facing side of the island, facing the Kiwa River. on a part of the island called Rhett's Bluff. That now I think there's like a boat landing there or something like that. I don't really know. Again, I haven't been able to sort of get behind the gates to see it.
Somebody said they can get you. One of my beekeeper friends said they can get you in there if you want.
Yeah. Next time I'm down there, I would love that, because I would like to sort of drive around and see what I can see there. So yeah, this is this picture of it, but this was torn down. And again, like, this is a question of what is deemed worth of preservation. And the only structure on Kiwa that was deemed worthy of this kind of protection was the Vanderhorst Big House, the 1803 mansion, which the Post and Courier covered, and which is what sort of launched Ashley and David and me to write this op-ed. So I'm going to stop sharing this picture. I'm happy to, send this to you, Mika. And yeah.
Let me. I'm calling a timeout. I'll give my sports fandom. I'm timeout. So you mean it's okay? We about to get into the op-ed, and this is why you said this last night. So we lift up Quash. We talk about this family, this man, this person, right? We learn about this hidden history and all of this labor that this man, had to, dedicated to maintaining this island. And you mean to tell me that house that the Post and Courier, like, hey, the big house is for sale. That's the house you were talking about. The house the only house that they saved, the big house.
Yeah.
Look at that I just wanted to do that for effect. Look at that full circle moment, y'all. Look at that. Look at that. Y'all thought, oh man, she talking about Kiwa. This ain't got nothing to do with preservation. Nah, look at that full circle. Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a reason why I was like, Quash is the way into this, like, this is a great way to talk about, a great venue to talk about him. And also, to provide some of that Black history that isn't really known about, this figure who's not really talked about much, but to bring it back, because it is all connected in the Lowcountry. Like, there is no disentangling any of this.
Yeah, and as a historian and curator with the Smithsonian, Mary Elliott said, there's no such thing as a little bit of slavery. Like, it literally is the landscape of Charleston and the surrounding area. Oh man! Oh my gosh! Oh right, let's go ahead and dive right into this op-ed then, because this is intriguing. Yeah. Okay. So and this is what prompted some of these details that you uncovered with that with that Twitter. Oh man, I should have got the Twitter thread, because that's what I was.
Yeah. I've got here. I pulled it up in prep. I'll send it to you in chat real quick.
Okay.
I've got my Twitter thread that I posted when the op-ed went up that sort of explained the history of it and stuff. Okay. And I pulled it up just to make sure I'm getting the details right when I talk with y'all about it.
Okay. I'm not going to click on it because I don't want to I don't want to obscure the screen, but I got it, and we'll refer to it. Yeah. Okay.
Oh. Yeah, so let's talk about, I know this is sort of the, how we made our connection here and everything like that. But learning about this history is partially what's brought me to sort of think critically about historic preservation, and too about how Lowcountry properties are marketed. And for me, I want to make this clear, it isn't just about how they're marketed. I also firmly believe that we didn't talk about this much in the op-ed, that there needs to be some sort of huge kind of program of some kind launched to help identify descendant communities, and to help figure out what to do with these labor camp properties, that takes it back to these descendant communities, that makes it so that rich white people can't profit off of them anymore the way that they do. In essence, sort of a form of land back, and making sure that this doesn't just continue to get looped into these cycles of white profit as they currently are. So I know I'm going to talk a lot about how they're marketed, but for me, I just want to make it clear, it's not just about how they're marketed. It's the simple fact that these commodified, wildly expensive properties continue to be held in private hands.
Right. And so I touched on that, like you probably saw because you were in the chat before we went on Zoom, the preservation, the whole practices around historic preservation is just preserving white supremacy and maintaining white land ownership. And someone asked, Agent M in the chat asked earlier about, she said, are there descendants of Kiwa people? Now, she was talking about the indigenous people, but even them, like, why aren't we connecting any descendants, whether it be descendants of the enslaved, formerly enslaved, or we're not connecting those people to this land, and they have a right to it. It's their birthright. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Continue, please.
So yeah, I just feel like it's worth clarifying because you talk about marketing, but it's not just about the language around it, right? It's also about sort of the material reality of what has been done to these spaces. So yeah. So yeah, what happened is Ashley and David and I are all on Twitter. And we're all from South Carolina and write about South Carolina as historians. And we had all sort of been paying attention to real estate coverage in the Lowcountry. And over the last few years, we'd all sort of written little Twitter threads about different properties that we saw going for sale in the Lowcountry that are former labor camps, right? I think that, let's see, I've got some of the earlier ones there. So yeah, for example, David published an op-ed in the Post and Courier talking about how in an early article they published, they'd sort of ignored talking about enslaved labor in building the Santee Canal.
They let that go. They
published that op-ed.
Yeah. What year? What year was that?
That is from 2019.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they did fairly recently. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So he did that and they actually published it. So,
Yeah. Give him that. I'll give him that. That's that much. That's it.
Yeah. And in August 2020, Ashley wrote a little tweet thread about the Post and Courier coverage of the Chicora Wood Plantation, which is up in Georgetown County, I think. And in there too, she also wrote about this, this doesn't talk about enslaved labor and how this created this, landscape that's now been all beautified and prettied up and is, advertised for its, natural beauty without ever acknowledging what's really behind that, right? And then in March of 2020, the Post and Courier published a piece about the Vanderhorst House on Kiwa Island. And that was when I tweeted about it because, of course, I was embedded in the Quash Stevens research at this time and knew exactly what had gone on in Kiwa, knew exactly who the Vanderhorsts were.
Look at that. Look at that. You was ready. You were ready.
Yeah. And there's some funny things about that particular Post and Courier article on the Vanderhorst. And I have all the receipts for this. I'm happy to send this along to anyone who might not believe me about this. But the first version of the article on the Vanderhorst Big House, built in 1803, likely by enslaved workers, didn't mention slavery once. Not a single time. And then after this article went up, the South Carolina Historical Society put some posts on Facebook dredging up some historical documents about the history of slavery on Kiowa under the Vanderhorsts.
Really?
Which I thought was sort of an interesting, I don't think that timing was a coincidence. I think that was sort of a subtle way of drawing attention to this, right? And the next couple days after that, the Post and Courier includes updated information in that article on the Vanderhorst. They
said they change it on the digital edition, of course, right? I guess it was in print. It probably was because it's real estate. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so they changed it in the digital edition, but they didn't issue a correction or note the correction on the top of the article. So they just changed it very quietly. But I have the original version that doesn't mention slavery saved on my desktop.
There you go. Receipts.
And I have the updated one.
Just too. Like that belt buckle ad. We got the original belt buckle ad. You can crop it if you want.
Whenever it comes to these, you always got to capture the original,
That's right.
Yeah. And so when they published that one and I tweeted about it, David said, would the three of y'all like to write an op-ed about this? About coverage of this plantation real estate and talk about why you have to talk about this full history if you're going to discuss these places, right? You can't just talk about when the house was renovated and what kinds of shutters they put up or how pretty the double portico is,
Yeah, wainscoting and shit.
History,
yeah,
right? That's not the real history, right? That's the stuff you focus on to deflect from the real history, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's that, you know what, like, and I didn't mean to keep, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. Go ahead. But no, like this, like when I was thinking about like recent mainstream conversations about race and I'm not going to bring that conversation here, not directly, but it really shows you too, like that omission is just as violent as, let's say they published the N-word 40 times in that story. I know that's all people can see is the explicit violence of racism. They don't see the subtleties of omission and how violent that is. And they know that, talking about shiplap or the shutters and shit, that is deflecting away from the real history. And that's intentional. Yeah.
It is. And we can talk about exactly how this came to be too. Once I finish up on the
let me let you finish. I'm so excited.
No, because I think it's so important to build these layers, because like if it's not baldly explicit, folks might not notice it, but it has this history to it that makes it clear if you look at it, right? We wrote this op-ed in an original version, and we're trying to figure out where to put it, because here's another problem, and you talk about this a lot too. The state of journalism in South Carolina isn't doing so good, right? So
that's your opinion, right? Like seriously, like you even feel.
Well, I mean, it's rough out there, right? There aren't a bunch of like independent newspapers out there that we could publish this in, right? Like that doesn't really. There aren't that many of them. Like we've seen a real attrition in sort of news coverage. And yeah, I don't know. It was tough to find a place, right? There's not many good sort of independent journalist outlets in South Carolina left. Right. And that's a problem. Yeah. And that's why the work you do is so important, because like you do these deep dives into news coverage. You remember who all these folks are. Yep. You put all these connections together.
Tell them what you call me. I like it. I own it. Do you remember the name you called me?
Oh, what did I call you? Oh my God! Tell me. No, it's on the tip of my tongue.
No. You like I'm the cyber bully.
Oh yeah. I was joking about.
No, I hope you don't mind me saying that. I embrace that actually. Yeah. I'll cyber bully the shit out of them.
Gotta not let up on these places, right? You have to be consistent. You have to make sure you've got all of this information saved, right? So that you can remember why certain issues are being covered a certain way, what that person who pops up in the news was doing a few years ago that makes their motivations here clear, right? Yeah. You got to stay up on this. So we were having trouble finding a place to publish it. And it took us a while. It was rough. We had some real dead ends we had to face. And it kind of petered out, unfortunately. It was disappointing. But we kept noticing the Post and Courier kept publishing these pieces. And in late June, we decided, let's just send it to the Post and Courier. Like, let's give them the chance to publish this op-ed so that they can start grappling with this history. It gives them an opportunity to make good, right?
See if they would like even print it. Yeah, like you do have to we did. Not everybody does. We felt we should give them a chance. Why not, right? We're not trying to do this in an underhanded kind of way. Right. Like, we're not ashamed of what we've written. We stand by it, right? Right. Since we stand by it, we have no problem taking it right to them and saying, all right, here's what we've written. We'll like to give you an opportunity to publish it in your own pages if this is something you feel like grappling with, right? Why not? Yeah, no. Like I was about to type it in the chat. I'll just say it. You just like if you kind of like want to make it a little less formal, you're like, yeah, I'll say it to your face. Like, and what? Like, I'll take it to your face. Yeah. Yeah. We didn't get a response back. Oh, wow. We even sent a follow-up a week later, crickets. That's fine. That's what we expected. But like, again, we just wanted to be upfront about it. And we kind of let it go for a little while. But then in late August or early September, the Post and Courier published 2 new articles on plantation real estate. Still with the one of which didn't mention slavery at all, and the other which referred only to enslaved labor on the plantation, which is a weird phrase. Okay. Say it again. Say it again. Enslaved labor on the plantation. Not people, not enslaved people. Enslaved labor. Like
Am I wrong? Isn't that weird phrasing?
That is but that's what they want to do. They want to remove the human element of it to absolve themselves. Right? Exactly. And thank you for pointing that out, because I don't even think I would have just. I don't even think I would have honed in on that one word, labor. And thank you for acknowledging that. Absolutely. Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah. And so I got kind of mad about that, and I posted a thread talking about how easy it is to find out information about these places if you really want to try, about the history of slavery. Because here's the thing, again, all these papers are out there. There's a lot of information on Google that you can find. Ancestry.com, tons of information on there.
Honestly. Yeah, they got I know there's a DNA issue there that I'm Allie put.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But
they have our historic censuses with data that you can use, right?
Yeah, but they definitely are a resource. Even the library has an Ancestry.com database tab that folks can use at the public library. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I feel weird about Ancestry, but they are a useful resource for Gina.
Very. Yeah. They're very.
So yeah. And I posted this big thread about it, and it got, a little bit of traction and everything like that. And that also got us the three of us fired up again. So we took it to Made by History, which is a section of the Washington Post run by professional historians, where they publish opinion pieces, sort of using history to reflect on the present. So we sort of worked it up. The editors over there were fantastic. They were so great with working with us. And it moved really smoothly and really quickly. And the op-ed ended up being published in late October of last year, talking about why it's important to tell these full histories, to not gloss over it. And I want to be clear here too. I'm not trying to just dump on the Post and Courier. Lots of other news outlets do this. They're doing this well enmeshed in a culture and a society that lifts up and commodifies these spaces at the expense of African Americans in the Lowcountry, right? It's not just them. The New York Times published an article on some Charleston townhouse that also ignored slavery, and we did a thread about that and wrote a letter to their editor about that as well.
Right, and that's after I've been featured in the New York Times about preservation, so they know better. They have people embedded in this area. They know better, but exactly that. Yeah. It
happens in all these different places. It just happens that, of course, the Post and Courier is one of the most prominent voices in the region, and they have this huge platform that they should think carefully about how they use it, right? And again, to be clear too, I know there are a lot of fantastic reporters at the Post and Courier doing their very best. And a lot of people who have worked at the Post and Courier who have worked really hard to try to change the culture there too. We know this, right?
Right.
But again, there aren't many options for journalists to work in South Carolina, right? There are not many options. But yeah, that's just my disclaimer to be like, this is, it's not just Post and Courier doing this. There's an entire industry around these labor camps that have been all fancied up for sale, right? It's not just them alone. I think too that it's also interesting to have the Post and Courier posting these pieces. And mind you, they've kind of changed their tune a little bit. All of their real estate pieces that they've posted since then include this kind of research about the places, about slavery. There hasn't been one sense that's ignored it or that's really completely marginalized that history. So it seems pretty clear to me they heard us, even if they're never going to make a public statement about it.
I'm going back to the belt buckle. You point out the belt buckle. You do a thread with that one too. And again, another thing that I would not have caught, because that's something I wasn't raised up in, that the more subtle Confederate soldier bullshit, but that belt buckle, started to see that first they replaced the ad, then I guess old boy was like, nah, I want my face back on there or whatever, or whoever. And then they put him back, but they cropped the belt buckle out. So they are hearing us, whether they admit it or not, or write a correction or not. But so you're saying that now they've added additional context to their,
they do.
Yeah.
they have added some additional context, and I'm not giving them a cookie for that or anything like that. And I'm just saying this to be straightforward about what's happened since that time. Because again, I don't think any of that cures the central problem here. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that these places are being bought and sold for millions and millions of dollars, while Black land loss continues to be a serious issue in the Lowcountry, right? Mm-hmm. That's the real problem here, isn't it?
That is the problem. That is the thing right there. And again, yeah, like I think that, I'm not a journalist, so I don't want to pretend that, but like one of the friends, the homies to the chat, to the community here, Joy talked about like how the Post and Courier just prints narrative. Like even if I want to learn about, let's just say I want to learn about the bullshit story with Nancy Mason, these pandas, I want to hear like a critical, like I want to hear some sort of critical voice or critical examination, not just accepting what press release that her team put out or whatever access you enjoy from that person. And that applies to real estate, to history, to a lot of things. Like it's just like they go to the source and print whatever is given to them versus examining it, giving it a full examination. Yeah. And
I mean, this is one of the other sort of tensions at the heart of this, which is that the Post and Courier does have this series it runs on, Black history in the Lowcountry, but for a long time, they were printing those pieces alongside these plantation real estate pieces.
So it's so violent. It's so exactly that. And people think that the mere mentioning of an atrocity, the mere acknowledgement of an atrocity is doing the work. No, you mentioning that and then you got
to be consistent.
Yeah, right? And not just put it next to the icky stuff too. Yeah, it's really weird.
There's a lot of stuff. Okay. Let's see. I was trying to think about anything else to say about the Post and Courier belt. Yes, the belt buckle. Right. So this happened in late November of last year, and so a friend actually passed the ad along to me. And I was like, you want to take a look at this? I took a look at it and I saw his belt buckle. And I was like, what? Because the belt buckle. So what this was is the Post and Courier of Columbia took out an ad on Facebook advertising one of their sports writers' 20 years of experience.
Yes.
And had a picture of the guy on this ad, with his arms folded, and you could see that he had this big belt buckle on. And the belt buckle was like brass or whatever, and it had CS on it. Mm-hmm. And if you know stuff about how this works, that's a Confederate belt buckle. It's a Confederate States belt buckle. And if you Google Confederate States belt buckle, you'll find a bunch of results that look exactly like that have the CS on it, that you can purchase from websites like heritagecostumes.com.
Heritage, always in there somewhere. Yeah.
Or on eBay or whatever, right? Yeah. I don't know if it's a reproduction or an original, but either way.
My ass was like, is it Columbia Streets? Like I literally did not register until I read your thread. Like, and as a huge sports fan, just to kind of like derail this a little tiny bit, but as a huge sports fan, I can't listen to local sports coverage here because they tap into that deep Southern fried Confederacy voice. And I'm like, where are the younger, voices that might have lived in another region or whatever? You can be Southern, you can be local, Charleston or whatever, but that culture of, like, I mean, shit, Clemson is a fucking plantation, like, but it has a huge football program. It's so interconnected. Like this history in this region and from this state is so connected to the sports culture, and it really got by me. And I'm so appreciative that you lifted it up. Like you said, you can Google Confederate States, y'all, and y'all can just see hit the images tab. And there you go. Yeah.
So my friend and I were talking about that, and I was like, I think I'm gonna tweet about this. And I said, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. And so I did. And I posted the pictures. I genuinely don't remember the sports writers' names, but I did crop that in the original images for whatever that was.
Yeah, you were good. I wasn't, but you were good.
And this is the thing. I mean, like, maybe it was a mistake. Like maybe the copy ad folks didn't notice it. That's also not an excuse, right?
There you go.
Like if you're going to put out an advertisement for your company, then you're responsible for the content of that, right? It's your job to notice those details and to make sure that what's being expressed there is consistent with the values of your organization.
There you go. And to be honest with you, I expect a lot more from a Pulitzer Prize winning publication. And the Pulitzer wasn't from 1940. That was, 2015, 2014. Like, I expect more due diligence with that. Because that was Post and Courier, but the Columbia. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, I expect more. Yeah.
I posted a thread about it. And you reposted that to your Instagram. We've got a lot of followers. And what happened the next day was there were 2 new versions of the ad posted to Facebook. One still mentioned the sports writer's name and talked about his 20 years of experience, but instead showed 3 Black football players.
Yes. Thank you for sending me that too. I thought that was interesting too. Really interesting choice.
And then there was the other version, which was of the same guy, but cropped just enough so that the belt buckle wasn't in it anymore.
And that's my favorite one. Like, I was like, it was like, y'all really, but it was a clear acknowledgement of the criticism and of the critique. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. So I saw that. I was like, okay, I guess they saw that somehow. They saw the thread, whether it was on Twitter or whether it was posted to your Instagram. Now, I do have a few Post and Courier reporters who have followed me in the last 6 months since I started posting threads about the real estate coverage. So I don't know if they're sort of, noticed it through that or, through your Instagram, but either way.
Yeah, they definitely, I think you're helping. I think you're giving them some guidance, whether, directly or indirectly, not directly, but that's interesting.
So somehow that made its way up and things got changed around and, there's implicit acknowledgement of the error in the mere fact that they changed the ad, but nothing public, right? Because I feel like this is something consistent that you see is there's sort of not a real interest in publicly and openly acknowledging and dealing with what this means, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever will. I don't know everything that goes on there. I don't know a lot of what goes on there, right? I'm not of that inner circle. This is just what I've pieced together from their own news coverage they themselves publish and publicize, right?
Yeah. But looking at some of the folks that have left, some really talented folks, whether I was a fan or not, like talented people it seemed like every month there's 2 to 3 names of some real heavy hitters, whether it's the medical coverage during COVID with MK, Thomas Novelli, just really heavy, Jamie Lovegrove, just a lot of talent is lost. And I think that's indicative. I know I'm speculating here, but I think that's indicative too of the culture there. And that might indicate that there's, Hannah Raskin, a lot of loss there. Yeah.
Yeah, there absolutely is.
Yeah.
I think that certainly, again, I don't know what's going on. But yeah, it has been very interesting to sort of follow this coverage over the last, year and a half that I've been sort of keeping an eye on it with help from David and Ashley. It's again massively important because the Post and Courier is, one of the few big news outlets that there is left. They have this enormous platform. There's so much they could do with it. And it's all connected to these larger questions about historic preservation, African-American land loss. It brings it all together. And there are a lot of ways that platform could be used.
Well, hopefully they'll get some new leadership where they make some key changes that aren't performative, that aren't just, aren't just decorative or just, that hopefully they just don't signal that they've changed. Hopefully they actually change and commit themselves to more credible storytelling or reporting because it's not complete. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So that was sort of the other sort of big thing that brought me into this orbit. And I don't know. I'll just keep an eye on what continues to happen. And Yeah, I think that it's just like a small piece of the kind of work that you do every day with keeping your eye on what's going on, bringing these connections together, and sort of showing how all of this is connected. This history, the way this marketing and real estate industry unfolds, how it's talked about in the public sphere, but then also too how all this continues to make money in Charleston and who it makes money for.
Make a lot of money, Caroline, a lot of money.
Yeah. The Vanderhorst House, that sold for $20.5 million.
Wow. I think,
right?
yeah.
And Quash spent the remaining years of his life struggling to make ends meet, right?
That's crazy. That part. Now that part right there is heartbreaking and sobering. Yeah. He spent all that time on that island, maintaining that island, yet he was, pretty much just punished or just exiled from his own. It's just ridiculous. And then I'm thinking about the 40 other community members and families that were there that left too, probably around the same time or shortly thereafter. This is crazy. Yeah. Oh man. Well, what you're working on so people could, because the chat is just a humming and people are excited. Someone just pulled over there on I-95. They said they're listening, can't talk in real time, but they're listening of how amazing this is, how vibrant the conversation is. Man, like what's next for you? So we can fangirl, fan guy.
Yeah, sure. I'm have this book coming out with the University of North Carolina Press later this year. I don't have a date yet, but I'll keep y'all updated on that. It's called Hurricane Jim Crow: How the Great Seattle Storm of 1893 Shaped the Lowcountry.
Whoa. I'm gonna give you some bars. Yeah, listen. Hold on. That's called motherfucking bars. Wait, the name of the book is what?
Hurricane Jim Crow.
Ooh. Yeah. What? Oh, we got it. Oh.
No, I mean, hurricanes until 1950 didn't have names because people always ask me, well, what's the name of the hurricane you study? And I say, well, it doesn't have a name. But I thought that it should be called Hurricane Jim Crow, right? Because this happens in 1893. And it's the deadliest hurricane in South Carolina history. It ends up, it's a horrible tragedy. It kills at least a couple thousand people. And all but 24 of the people who died in that hurricane were African American.
All but 24?
All but 24.
What?
Yeah. And what I do in the book, and I'll keep this part brief, but what it does is it sort of shows how an environmental catastrophe like the hurricane ends up becoming this sort of lightning rod for political debate, and ends up being used in very different ways by white South Carolinians who want to sort of use the hurricane's destruction to crush Black autonomy in the Lowcountry, versus the Black communities left in the wake of this devastation who do everything they can to try to rebuild and bolster themselves against sort of this assault of Jim Crow white supremacy from the rest of the state.
Damn.
Right? And this hurricane is incredibly impactful. People are talking about it in the 1920s. These African Americans who left St. Helena Island, a lot of them point to that hurricane and say, after that, just nothing got better. One woman who left said, the biggest factor in why I moved was that hurricane. Like why she left the island was because of this. And so, this hurricane gets wrapped up in all of these political changes in South Carolina from the 1890s until the 1920s, right? It becomes a part of the story of the Great Migration.
Yeah. And that's what somebody, you mentioned the whole Harlem, the connection between St. Helena and Harlem. And then I dropped in the chat, Chicago, these other big regions. My dad was on yesterday. He talked about going to Jersey. Like this, all like a lot of these stories are informed by a bigger force, and it's not. And again, to my biggest criticism, not to keep beating this horse, y'all. I know y'all tired of me here, and you probably are too. But Post and Courier, don't just write about the pain and anguish. Write about the survivorship. Write about how they thrived in other areas. Write about fugitivity. And, I just really wish we learned more about how these people adapted in other regions after living through something like Hurricane Jim Crow. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, that is a big part of it. You see after the hurricane examples of like labor organizing among Black sharecroppers in the Lowcountry to try to get aid so that they aren't reliant on white landlords to the same extent that they had been before, right? Like there's all these moments of possibility after this that Black communities in the Lowcountry try to use to make a better future for themselves and their loved ones, right? Yeah. Even despite having to live through this, horrifying tragedy. Many people lost their entire families in this hurricane, right? And the thing is that the white supremacy itself shaped who died in this hurricane too. Like, for example, places where more folks died included rice plantations, which, there wasn't enslaved labor on those anymore because it was 1893, but, it still heavily exploited African-American labor, right? On these places. Yeah. So yeah, that's what the book is about. And it also, takes us into the 1920s in some ways too, by looking at what white South Carolinians, white Charlestonians do to sort of create new forms of exerting their power over the Lowcountry that contributed to why historic preservation becomes such a powerful force in Charleston in the 1920s and 1930s.
Go ahead. Finish that thought.
Yeah.
Historic preservation.
So what happens is, and actually one of the other projects I'm going to work on, one of the things that I've read a lot about are white Charlestonians complaining about how poor they are after the Civil War.
Oh yes! Oh my gosh, girl! I be in the newspapers like, girl, go ahead, go.
They complain about it all the time.
Amen.
And I want to, in a new article or something like that, I'm just starting to work on this. I want to really dive into that. I want to say, what do these white folks mean when they talk about wealth? Okay. In part, of course, they're talking about enslaved property and how they lost all of that. Boo-hoo. But it also, for them, wealth is tied up in how they exert their power, right? And I want to examine what they mean when they claim they got all poor, because like they're still living in their fancy Charleston townhouses. They still own these massive plantation properties out in the countryside. They still control the political landscape of Charleston itself,
Wow. They got all this and they just mad because they don't have that. It's almost like the plot, I guess, the premise of Gone with the Wind, the novel and the movie. Like, Scarlett, I don't have this, I don't have that. Anyway, keep going. Yeah.
So, one of the things that white Charlestonians and white residents of the Lowcountry do in the 1920s and 1930s is they begin to construct something I call the lost cause of the Lowcountry. And this is sometimes referred to as the Charleston Renaissance. But I think that glosses over what the real sort of meaning of that time period was. Because the Charleston Renaissance is used to refer to the creation of Charleston's historic district, right? Which you were just talking about, right? Mm-hmm. To refer to these artists, white artists in the Charleston area, like Alice Ravenel, Hugh G. Smith, for example. Mm-hmm. Like Du Bois Hayward, which if you get Ashley on here, she can talk all about Du Bois Hayward and Porgy and Bess.
Okay, real quick, indulge me.
Yeah, sure.
What do you feel? You know the Boaz Hayward, his mama, right? That whole paternalistic mess with the spiritual. Like, what are you just like?
Well, I have a book right here that I think is really underrated that talks about all of this era. So when I'm talking about anything I know about the Preservation Society, the Society for the Preservation of Old Dwelling Houses, the Society for the Preservation of Spirituals, the person who writes about this. And that's fascinating is Stephanie Ewell, A Golden Haze of Memory. Is this book you've read?
Oh, I've seen it at events where I've spoken and they had it on the table. And the Golden Haze of Memory.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
She lays it all out.
That's
and she talks about the preservation, the Society for the Preservation of Spirituals, which I'm sure your viewers know. I know you know this, but of course that's where white Charlestonians dress up in antebellum garb and go around singing African American spirituals.
Yes, we talk about. I need to talk about that more because that shit is mad annoying and still happening.
Exists, Mika. I googled it. There is still a website up for the Society for the Preservation of Spirituals. Yeah, you can find it.
Oh no, goodness gracious!
I don't know who it's run by because they don't have their name on it, but they have like an email address and everything. I assume it's some ancient White Charlestonian, sort of
like the daughter, but like the Daughters of Confederacy still popping. They still organize. Yeah, like it's crazy. Yeah. Oh my God.
And so, she says it outright. It's just like that quote that you were playing earlier in this. And she says it outright. She says, in Charleston, historic preservation meant the structural renovation of old houses in areas where elite whites and poor working class Blacks had lived side by side for generations. And she says straight up that, as you said, what they do is they prioritize white-owned houses, and they knock down Black neighborhoods in order to achieve historic preservation in Charleston in these earlier years of the society's existence, and past that too. But she's talking specifically about the 1930s.
Now that you mention it, my friend Brian, I believe he said that the way I rely on Denmark VC's Garden a lot, but I think he made the argument to another friend of ours that book, The Golden Haze of Memory, is so foundational, so important. I'm going to buy. I already bought. What did I buy yesterday? Oh, I bought something else. I'm going to buy that today. I'm going to invest in that because this is. I gotta. Yeah, this is. And I'm also have a campaign where we're going to try to get your book on a New York Times bookseller, like whatever. We want to get you all the national awards, short list, long list, whatever. We want. No, I'm dead ass serious. Like this and the Golden Haze of Memory and other, like there are other historians that write about all the. Oh man, this is like you don't understand. Like this is igniting so much. But yeah, when we talk about Porgy and Bess, I got a little emotional about it with the Post and Courier, and I didn't really mean to hurt. I really didn't mean to be so mean, but I was just so tired of like Porgy and Bess being just like no one is talking about how complicated that piece is and all the either the opera or the musical. Like it's so complicated. It's not, and I know Black people are in it and tremendous performances are associated with it, and I think those are important things to see and witness, but it doesn't. The origins of that body of work is so, for me, just overwrought with just exploitation. And so it's hard for me to be a fan of it outright.
Ashley has just been doing work that writes about that history.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely. I know that y'all would have a great conversation about that.
I'm going to hit her up. I'm going to hit her just like soften it for me right now. She's probably watching, but soften it for me right now. Let her know that I'm going to slide them in them DMs for sure because we got to get it. Yeah.
So all that's wrapped up in this era, the Charleston Renaissance, the lost cause of the Lowcountry, which I think is sort of a slightly better title for it, because what happens is as African Americans move away from the Lowcountry, as the sort of agrarian base of white wealth in the Lowcountry begins to shift, what you end up seeing are this sort of new generation of elite white Charlestonians starting to craft new narratives about what slavery looks like. And these new narratives gloss over it entirely, right? Even Alice Ravenel Hughes Smith, her, little watercolors of rice slavery that make it look all pastel-y and pretty, right? And it wasn't. And she does illustrations for a book called A Woman Rice Planter, which was written by Elizabeth Alston Pringle and published in 1913. Is this a book you're familiar with?
No, this one not. The Golden Haze.
So this also gets to what you've talked about with the problem with white women. And the fact is that this lost cause of the Lowcountry is absolutely a narrative in part created and propped up by white women in Charleston. The Society for the Preservation of Dwelling Houses was founded by Susan Pringle Frost, who was of an elite white Charleston family. She lived in the Miles Bruton house basically her whole life.
Oh, wow. Where's that at? Where's the Miles Bruton house?
That is on King Street, and actually the latest generation of Manigos lives there.
Oh, thank you for that. Oh.
Yeah. So to bring in a little Post and Courier, loop back in right there,
You never know it. They never, exactly. Look at that.
Yeah, so she's related. She's of like the larger Manigo family clan. And here's the thing too, all these white elite families in Charleston are related to one another. It's not a family tree, it's more of like a circle. If you look at these family trees in Charleston. So anyway, Susan Pringle Frost is involved with this, A Woman Rice Planter, written by Elizabeth Alston Pringle. And that book too creates this racist narrative about African Americans and creates these sort of whitewashed visions of what work and rice culture looked like for African Americans. She describes it in these glossy terms. She assumes that she always knows best when it comes to how these rice farms should be managed.
Gross.
And she was a woman who was born, I think, just before the Civil War. And she tried to manage her daddy's rice farm after the Civil War to keep it going. Because again, you know, what their goal is just to create like a new version to mimic as much as possible the conditions of slavery and rice cultivation under slavery, right? Oh, wow. Yeah. And so she writes a book about her experiences and publishes it in 1913. And Alice Ravenel Smith does illustrations for that sort of go along with the text. Oh, wow. I think cousins of some kind. Again, I was trying to like dissect their family trees. But yeah, these people all know each other. And so publications of books like that, the creation of watercolors like that, the foundation of the Charleston Historic District in 1931, after Susan Pringle Frost founds the Society for the Preservation of Old Dwellings in, I believe, 1920, 1921. It's all connected. And this is all the provenance of white elite women in Charleston, right?
Yep. And that's the thing, we like to let women off the hook, but, you know, they're complicit and they're the architects of a lot of this destruction. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely they are. So yeah, all of this like comes together in Charleston in the 1920s and 1930s to create this whitewashed vision of slavery that stretches not only from how people write and talk and even paint about this history, but down to sort of the material landscape of Charleston itself. And how it's decided to save certain houses and how it's decided to tear down others, right? And that falls entirely on the lines of race and class on the peninsula. Man. In a way that we still see every day. And you talk about nearly every day on the show too, right?
I try to. But you give it the credibility. You help me out. That's one thing I'm extracting from you. I ain't gonna lie. No, but I said this earlier in the chat, Caroline. I feel so seen and heard, and I didn't even mean that. Like I meant that literally. I feel seen and heard because our intuition tugs at us and says that something is amiss. Kia just dropped in the chat, like I think it was Kia. Like, why do they keep erasing? Yeah, why do they keep erasing the horror, like whitewashing and watercolor washing, like all of this history? It's staggering that it takes effort to do this. Yes, you know, it does. And like even in high school, sitting in St. Andrews, Mr. Barnwell saying if slaves don't run away, they were content, they were happy, they had health care, they had clothing, they had food. And they didn't, that's not what they had. It was not Social Security. It was not an entitlement program for sure. Yeah. Man.
Yeah. So it, again, like, and all of that has very sort of specific outcomes, right? It maintains power. It props it up. And it helps to, you know, create and prop up the system of racial hierarchy in Charleston in a way that sort of infuses both this sort of cultural regime that dominates Charleston for decades, down to even the creation of Charleston as like a tourist area that predominantly white tourists consume today, right? That too, you know, emerges from this era of the 1920s and the 1930s when that Charleston Historic District is established, when city leaders begin to realize that they can sort of cash in on Charleston's history in order to earn a profit. They've recommodified landscapes of slavery to continue making money today, right? Once again, at the expense of Black Charlestonians. It's a whole new cycle that taps into these deep roots in the Lowcountry of how white supremacy functions and of how wealth functions. Right?
No, this is amazing. I'm looking at the chat. I can't even keep up. Shout out to everyone's making it pop. I see. I want to give you some feedback. I'm seeing great.
Yeah.
Rajon said great info. Kia was saying juicy. What you saying juicy to, Kia? Because sometimes it's out of context. But people have pulled over saying so much good info. I see a lot of looking eyes when you were saying something of the family tree. Let me see. Y'all drop some feedback right now. Just drop some feedback or some takeaways on what y'all are getting. I know y'all already did it for the large part, but people are just dropping in how much they love how feeling like they're in one of your classes. I saw that earlier. Like, this feels like a course. And I feel like I owe money. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? I'm a Black woman right now, but seriously, like, this is the perspective we don't even get. And I feel cheated. I'm gonna speak for myself, but it sounds like the chat says the same thing. I feel cheated. Like, I want to know about the gnarly stuff, even the not so flattering things that existed, within Black history, because I want to see the whole picture. Absolutely. Yeah. Let me read some things. So Dee said the conversation is fire and she had to go back and listen because she came in a little late. Yep, that's fine. Brienne said incredible, engaging, interesting. These are like little book blurbs, it sounds like. Agent M, she says she's a great storyteller and brought it full circle. Joy said we feel like these things are happening, but it's interesting to hear you got the receipts, like you bring the receipts. Jessica, our community comedian, says that you're incredible. Had no idea this information was out there and found that she didn't say anything funny about you, but she was cracking jokes the whole time about these white women that you have unearthed. It's fascinating. Yeah, elevated role of historians. Right. That's what I want to do, Agent M, is want to elevate this. Historians are not just these dusty, and it's not just the same. No shade. I'm not even gonna mention no names. But I'm tired of seeing the same old crusty faces over, and some of them not crusty, but some of them are, just the same ones. And I'm definitely tired of seeing men only dominate historian, like the historian mantle. Like, just don't see enough women occupy that space. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you and Ashley. Soon as well, if schedule permitting, if she wants to. Yeah.
Well. Yeah. Oh, I know she does.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things too, is that I always find frustrating, which is that, there has been really great work by historians on these topics, even over the last 30 years, but it's not the work that's uplifted in the mainstream, right? And it's not. There's been a lot of difficulties about figuring out how to get this word out, right? Which is why I so appreciate you, inviting me into this space here to talk about this, right? Because this information and this knowledge should be shared. Like, it belongs to the Lowcountry. It belongs to y'all. And it's not right for y'all to be cordoned off from it, right? There need to be these avenues of communication between, professional historians like me and the communities that we know the history of, right? This isn't something we're supposed to hoard, because that's not right either. I'm so glad that you provide this opportunity to talk about this history, and that you talk about it so routinely on your show too. There's a lot out there that everybody deserves to learn about.
It's hard to explain this, and you probably communicated this more through action than anything else. But for me, it's like, the more I learn about history, all of history, not even just, again, culturally specific history, that the more I learn, the more I feel it animates me. It empowers me to use my voice. And while I don't, like I always say, I don't have the followers yet, I don't have the viewership yet, but I know that we're getting to a point where people are just as hungry. I'm meeting more people who are just as hungry to learn these lesser known facts, or these things that have been removed intentionally. And like you said, there's so many. Like, I'm thinking about when I was a bit more covert in social media. Like, I never showed my face, like in 2018, 2019 for this page in the space. And then, folks like, no, show your face. And what I started doing was just finding, when I was less face forward, I would just lift up the work of Black historians, Black women historians. And now I'm like, I can actually invite them and talk to them, and and make it more. Yeah, you have a first time look. Is that Mary Jo? Is that my Mary Jo from CFC? She's saying she said your work is lit with all like 5 exclamation points. Yes. Everyone's saying okay. Susanna, who is a public defender, she said the parallels between the past whitewashing and today's anti-CRT movement is so real. Absolutely. And I think I'm just reading some feedback, but yeah, this is the impact and the effect of learning your history. And this is the really weird. It's gonna feel like a curveball, but it's not. It's not a curveball that's intended to disorient. But when you were talking about Hurricane Jim Crow, and in the chat, I ain't gonna lie, in the chat, I renamed Hurricane Hugo Hurricane Riley because you just inspired me. But as I came up with that joke, because of all the displacement that happened after that, like it's the same thing. It happened again. So that when I was crafting that joke in my head and putting it in the chat, I thought about the museum. And then Dee said something earlier. Dee said this, and I've heard this before. Dee said there's something, she feels like there has to be a spiritual connection between hurricanes, how they develop on the western coast of Africa and come on to the south. Like, I mean, you know, whether we can prove it scientifically or not, that is an interesting fact that these storms start on the western coast and the transatlantic slave trade and all the blood that's right there. So that made me think of the museum. It's built on a wharf. And I'm as a historian, is there any do you have any fears about that history being like all those artifacts being in that building? And I'm sure it's going to withstand, you know, gale force winds and all that. But this sounds like a really weird question, I know, but like,
no, go ahead.
No, but just like, so the museum is on the wharf. We know that, you know, the significance of Gadsden Wharf, what happened there, the lives that were lost there, the lives that were trafficked into this city. And one of my like unofficial mentors said that, you know, you can't put all of Black history in one place. And I just, do you ever think about like the museum and I guess the role the museum is a hot mess. Like it just is. We just
I saw that article about it. Yeah.
Yeah. That article was, I need to find them. Yeah. But,
yeah.
But
I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like that's such a tough set of questions there, and one that, you know, I wish was much more firmly in the hands of Black Charlestonians. And I know there are a good number of Black Charlestonians on the board, and a lot of sort of museum professionals who are Black who have rotated on and off of the management there. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know. One of the things I do think about, obviously, is like, and this is sort of what brings in this environmental justice angle that does sort of call into question, well, what's going to be left of Charleston in 100 years?
Oh, right? Man.
You know, I mean, when you look at the hurricane of 1893, what made it so deadly was it had this massive storm surge, right? And you know this, you talk about the seawall all the time, right? What's going to happen to Charleston, right? How much of it is going to be lost? And how are we going to preserve the parts of it for the people who deserve it the most? Right. And so, there is a question of, well, how, right on the edge of the peninsula there, they're putting that museum in, but how many good years does that part of the peninsula have left? And I know that's really grim, and I even hate to make these kinds of speculations.
No.
About sea level rise.
That's why I brought it up, and I know it was like a weird kind of like I'm making you kind of pivot a little bit, but like that's what I guess that's what I was trying to say. Is like it's that this area is going to see devastating effects from sea level rise, and like I said on the previous live stream, not even just the tide and all that. We're talking about the water that's underneath. Our table is already. Like, you know, we're already below sea level. So like there's water coming up from the ground.
If you look at maps of Charleston Peninsula, back when English colonizers originally invaded, half of the Charleston Peninsula was salt marsh that's been infilled over the centuries, infilled by enslaved labor predominantly, right? By enslaved laborers, filling in those marshes, slogging around in that heat, in that mud, filling it in to build new lots. And then later, you know, other kinds of infill after the Civil War too. But Charleston was already at a disadvantage for flooding. And now with, you know, the climate crisis, which brings not only higher seas, but also increased frequency and intensity of hurricanes too. There's a lot facing Charleston's future that we can't ignore, right? Just as there's this history we can't ignore, there's this future we have to think about too. You know, all of this is present in the Lowcountry all at the same time, right? You can't ignore the past and you can't ignore the future. It raises a lot of questions.
Man, for sure. I appreciate that. So the book is on the way. You have a date, like,
Not yet. Sometime in the fall. Sometime in the fall.
Okay.
They're starting to do the copy edits and stuff like that. I think they're working on a cover. But I'll make sure to, be active about that on Twitter and everything.
Yeah. Whenever it's safe to share that, I want to see the cover ASAP. Like, cause, you already just inspired a TikTok that I think I'm going to try to, TikTok is a beast for me. I can't do all this social media. I'm on Twitch. It's a lot. Twitter, Twitch, and everything else. But
it's too much, like
it is.
Yeah.
But I gotta do it.
Millennials are like on the tail end of being able to handle all this. I'm impressed by all the stuff you do with Twitch, honestly.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all. And believe me, it takes a village of young people who grew up with internet and all that. Because believe me, this is not no easy lift. But no, you've inspired it with the hurricane talk. I want to lift up that hurricane and lift up. I'm probably gonna snatch a soundbite from you. Yeah, but please share when you can. But I'm extraordinarily serious about. Hopefully, we can do an in-person style at a theater, maybe somewhere public where people can hear you do what you just did, but and celebrate this book and really lift it up the way that I thought that Denmark VC's Garden would have been lifted up here in Charleston. It really wasn't, if you really think about it. And not just them, like you said, the Golden Haze of Memory. These books are foundational. When you buy a house, you should have to buy all these books.
You should. You absolutely should, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. The last comment I'm gonna read to you before we say bye. Mary Jo. I know Mary Jo because she's an archivist at the Addlestone Library. CFC.
Oh my God! Yeah. The South Carolina Historical Society. That's where the Quash Stevens letters are. I do so much research there. It is a valuable archive for me.
So they were at Addlestone.
Yeah, It's located in the Addlestone Library. They're on the second or third floor, I think.
Yeah. Yep. And Mary Jo, she's been along. Look, y'all, for real, she's one of those supporters of mine that's been there for a minute, and so I'm so happy that she's in the chat for the first time this morning.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She says Dr. Grego is too humble to shout about it. But her MSS already won an award. What's your MSS? The Heinz Prize.
The manuscript. The book manuscript itself. So the Carolina Lowcountry.
Sorry, go ahead. Go.
The Carolina Lowcountry and Atlantic World Program at College of Charleston has a book manuscript prize. So that means you can submit your book manuscript before it's been published, but when it's basically done. And every 2 years, they give it out to the best first book published on some aspect of the Carolina Lowcountry. And mine won their 2021 award for that. So I was so honored by that. It meant an enormous amount to me.
Oh man, this is why I love having this community space. It's not just a bunch of, faceless people. It's people who actually are like in community in some way, shape, or form with your work, with my work. This is awesome. Shout out to the Addlestone for real. Yeah, now they got some hidden Black history too in the backyard, but that's another live stream. But Caroline, thank you so much for just your time, your graciousness, your generosity, just a wealth of information. Seriously.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Again, I feel honored to be invited into the space, and I'm so happy that this is the place I was, able to share all of this, including Quash Stevens' story and Julia's story and Lila's story. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed speaking with you and getting to hear from your community here on Twitch too.
Man, we're gonna be talking about Quash and Julia and all them for a long time. You take care of yourself. I'm gonna go ahead and close out the Zoom room, but take care. Let's talk in the chat. Let's talk in the DMs for sure.
All right,
bye. Okay, applause. In meeting for all y'all. Shit, I'm overwhelmed. Let me see. And I know that that was different from how I typically I don't have an interview style. I swear to God, I'm trying to figure this out. I am not a trained journalist, so I just geek out. But and so we talked about. Okay, I make sure I followed through on the promises. Shit, we exceeded that. We talked about historical preservation, plantation real estate, and more. And I'm super grateful that she literally I was trying to finish up all of the stuff that I have to, these thumbnails and the newsletter last night. And I hit her up a little late. I'm like, this is good. This is good for tomorrow. And then she comes back later when I wake up, I see an email. She's like, I want to talk about Quash Stevens. And I'm like, who is that? And I said, no, don't Google it. Don't Google it. And so I'm super grateful that we got to learn so much more. Yeah. So like, and I know some people might be like, "Oh, it's Black History Month. Why you got a white historian?" We ain't doing that. We ain't playing. We're not gonna be reductive. If someone who I know, if there's a brain, a voice, an intellect, a scholar that has this wealth of knowledge that's done this work, and they're accessible. Look, y'all, this is grassroots. I don't have a booker. I don't have a producer. Y'all are my producers half the time. So whenever I get someone that I'm already in community with that does phenomenal work like Caroline, I'm going to go for it first. But that doesn't mean we're going to keep going, trot them on out. We're going to get as many voices as possible. I am super grateful that we have accomplices. This is not an ally, an accomplice like historian Caroline Grego. Please follow her. I've tagged her in my Instagram stories. I've tagged her there. It's not hard. Just search her. She'll pop up on Twitter and Instagram. It's easy. It's C Grego, I think, on both. So you can get it there. I'm not trying to be mean and say, yep, go ahead and Google it. But yeah, I tag her as much as possible. I didn't tag her in that story that went up this morning, but I tagged her in the story that went out last night. I just think this is exceptional. I feel Mary Jo. Thank you, Mary Jo. Yeah. I appreciate that. I feel like all self-conscious a little bit. Let me close out the Zoom window stuff. I be feeling self-conscious because I know I'm not, and I'm not trying to be Katie Couric or anybody like I ain't trying to be Oprah either. But I'm just trying to find my footing. But it feels like people are resonating with the authenticity, right? Shit, if Joe Rogan can be up there talking about nonsense that Black people ain't black, man, shit. No one questions his interview style, so I'm going to be more confident in mine. But this was great. Oh my God. Okay, so I'm going to close this out, this thumbnail, right? And I'm going to go back to the newsletter real quick before I leave, before I dip. Not 20 minutes, maybe. So if you read the newsletter this morning, if you opened it up, and I sent it twice while she was talking, I sent it out again to people who didn't open it initially. I want to lift up this post right here that I made. This is one of, shout out to Chris Barr, who works for the Reconstruction Era Monument down in the low country. We were talking last night. Oh man. We were talking on Twitter. He said he kidnapped me. He took me to a super secret historical spot that's not open to the public. And anyway, we kept in contact. I interviewed him for Mic'd Up. And he put me on, like, I remember August of 2020. He was like, yo, you know about, we were talking about sports. So he was like talking about these historic Black sports teams that existed in Charleston. And I'm like, wait, what teams? And we can't, there's no pictures, but there's these breadcrumbs. Then we start talking about Octavius Cato or Cato. It's interchangeable. So if you click on this in today's newsletter, you go to my post here. So, of course, now Octavius did not spend his life in Charleston, but why I wanted to feature him is because he's lesser known here because we don't celebrate our Black heroes here, as evidenced by this conversation with, with Caroline. We don't celebrate even the non-controversial, and he was radical as hell. He was radical as hell and quite handsome, if I may add. I think this is a dapper gentleman right here. Cute, right? Right? And thank y'all for the feedback. I appreciate y'all. I really do. Right? Yeah, this is the best Black History Month. Yeah. Okay, 44. Okay, Jackie Robinson. Okay, 44. Is Megsy still here, Megsy? Oh, yeah. Megsy. Next year, I'm going to be 42 Pac. So I was 41 Savage this year. I'm going to be 42 Pac next year. Get ready. It's going to keep going, too. I'm going to find all the rap references till I die. Oh God, let me stop. But anyway, so I wanted, they don't lift up the history. He's dapper, that's what I just said. But his story, why I think it's important, again, if you think about the moral contagion, you think about the literal laws that South Carolina and Charleston created so that Black people would not look at free or an emancipated Negro and get ideas about their own emancipation. And he was born to a very wealthy, prestigious Black family. He was freeborn, and I wanted to emphasize that. And so not all the free people of Charleston were mulattoes, even though it might be some white ancestry in his family tree that I haven't uncovered yet. But the point of the matter is, this was a very prestigious family, and this is a very prestigious person. So I wanted to actually go back to the clips that I pulled. So here, Shout out to, of course, When I Leave Philly. They do this. They do a lot of great things with public art in Philly. So there's this news clip that we're going to watch on YouTube real quick. And this is the statue. This is so in Philadelphia because Octavius Cato, again, born in Jersey, but born in Charleston. And then his life, his legacy, a lot of that time is spent in Philadelphia. So they've memorialized him in Philly. We don't even have a plaque or a mention of him because he's a son of Charleston, just like Harvey Gantt, right? So I'm going to go to YouTube now and lift up. But if you have a chance, I'm going to tell y'all this right now. I'm shadow banned like hell on Instagram. If you are one of those casual, like Whiskey Me always supporting the page, but please share, like and share and save if you want. If you hit the save tab, that little tab right here looks like a bookmark. That really helps my content break through the shadow bannedness. But even if it gets shared like 1,000, I've seen it literally. I've seen my post sometimes get shared like 100 times and get like 67 likes. Something ain't right. So share away. And I know also too, some people don't bang with me like that. But that's okay. But so let me hop. Oh wow, it's acting crazy. Let me hop out and then go to the YouTube, and then I'm gonna dip. But I think this is the Black History. Just ended it on this note. And I'm thinking about all these men and women, these people who are lost to obscurity, who are erased, who are omitted. And I want to get there. Okay, make sure I'm in the right account. Oh, poor Whoopi. All right, so let's play this clip first. And this is trigger warning, content warning. This is white supremacist violence. Very, very explicit white supremacist violence. I probably should have put that trigger warning in the caption, but here we go. We're going to go here. Oh, this ain't going to be short. I already know I'm about to go through like 3 clips. But this right here, this is, y'all know EJI. They're the ones, I hate calling it the lynching memorial, but that's the memorial that's down in Montgomery, Alabama. I had the pleasure of visiting when I was an employee with Black Voters Matter. They did a lot of, they used to make a lot of content that was very, 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 very good. I guess they still do, but this was one of the ones I encountered back in 2020. Let it play and stop talking. Let me make sure the volume is up.
After 2.5 centuries of enslavement in the United States, where Black people were tortured, abused, sexually assaulted, killed, and subjected to forced labor, emancipation finally came at the end of the Civil War with the ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865. Most formerly enslaved people in the United States were remarkably willing to live peacefully with those who had held them in bondage despite the violence they had suffered and the degradation they endured. Emancipated Black people put aside their enslavement and embraced education, hard work, faith, and citizenship. This period, called Reconstruction, held great hope for America and Black Americans in particular. But the Reconstruction era's initial hope for progress gave way to devastating, deadly violence.
We're seeing that now, y'all. It's in different ways. It's the same white lash. You think of the insurrection, think of this period. It's always a white lash after we make progress. Always. After civil rights, after, Reconstruction, after the Civil War, right? After Obama, 8 years of Obama. I know you're getting some ideas there, little mama.
1965 and 18.
Oh, see-we.
1976, thousands of Black women, men, and children were attacked, killed, and terrorized by white people who were shielded from arrest and prosecution.
No justice.
During the Memphis Massacre of 1866, white mobs indiscriminately beat, robbed, tortured, shot, raped, and killed Black women, men, and children.
Why don't you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Why are you complaining? Why do you need reparations? Just my ancestors came from insert European country. They were immigrants. They were called slurs. Why can't they built, they made businesses. They did everything. They opened up stores. Look at the model minority. Look at the Asians. They've opened up stores. Why can't you do it? Why can't you just stop complaining? Slavery was so long ago. Why are you complaining?
In the course of 3
all
days,
this fucking violence.
90 Black homes
waves
were
and waves and waves. Let me just say
churches were
waves and waves and waves and waves and waves at every fucking turn, y'all. Just every time. You saw what happened on Kiwa. Quash was out there just chilling like, yo, I'm holding it down, 40 families and all that. Here come nephew. Nah, get the fuck, like, we try. Every time we try to build a house, every time we try to participate in democracy, here you'll come with the lynch mobs. And then now you want to erase it, but you can't. You can't.
Were burned to the ground. Black residents were stripped of their belongings and forced to flee into the woods. There was no criminal prosecution against the white instigators of the Memphis Massacre, one of hundreds of such incidents during this period.
I got you, little mama.
The surge of anti-black violence prompted Congress to approve the first Reconstruction Act in February 1867 to ensure that black people's equality would be reinforced. In 1868, the 14th Amendment declared all persons born in the country were citizens regardless of race and thus entitled to privileges of citizenship, due process, and equal protection.
Oh, so we good.
Over
okay.
80% of eligible black men registered to vote. Schools for
so we good now, right? Like, yeah, Lincoln, he saved us. We good. We gonna vote.
Obstacles to win elections to public office.
Come on.
This triggered a violent backlash from those within the white community who could not accept black equality. In Opelousas, Louisiana, in September 1868, white citizens terrorized the community to suppress black voter turnout in the upcoming election. White mobs roamed the countryside for several weeks, targeting black citizens and their white allies, murdering an estimated 200 people.
Standing up for Black lives always had risks, always.
Other massacres of hundreds of black people took place in New Orleans, Colfax, and parishes throughout Louisiana. Violence spread from Texas to North Carolina, where white mobs sought to intimidate and deprive black people of their rights.
There you go.
Despite being continuously terrorized by their former enslavers, the black community mobilized throughout the South by organizing meetings, parades, and petitions calling for the implementation of their legal and political rights, including the right to vote. In 1870, the United States ratified the 15th Amendment, explicitly prohibiting racial discrimination in voting. But still, most
white women was mad. White women was mad. What, they had the vapors? They had the vapors, Cousin Jessica?
White people refused to accept black citizenship. In both the North and the South, there was tremendous resistance to the idea of black equality. On October 10, 1871, African-American activist and Union Army veteran Octavius Cato left the Philadelphia.
A real one. A real one. A real one.
Pennsylvania school, where he served as a teacher and administrator, and headed to the polls to cast his ballot in the city's mayoral election. Mr. Cato successfully cast his vote, but on his way home from the polls, he was assassinated by Frank Kelly, who had ties to white supremacist party leaders and who was later acquitted.
I'm not saying this lightly. The way this city tolerates the Kellys of our era now, the way this city lets Tyler Bessinger and Corey Allen and his white women allies, the way they don't check that, but they throwing people who damaged the police car, throwing them in jail and federal fucking prison for 18 months, plus, and on top of that, even more chargeable. The way that the Kellys of the world can participate and perpetuate violence with impunity, with no risk of arrest, history keeps repeating itself. I'm telling you.
Acquitted by an all-white jury.
Acquitted.
Being attacked or killed on an election day was a common reality for black citizens.
And I'm gonna stop it right there because that's why I wanted. I didn't want to. Well, that's part of his story. He was murdered after he voted, and he was murdered specifically for a reason, y'all, because of the position Octavius held in his community. That's why Kia, you just dropped in there. They helped. They killed JFK. They killed They killed MLK. They killed Robert Kennedy, right? The accomplices. And they killed whoever was seen to be sympathetic to black causes, right? I think this is the one I wanted to use. No, that's not it. That's not it. There's one older story. I think this is it. Let me rewind it. Starts off with like a map, I think. Let me see if this is it.
Cato was very well respected in the community.
Yeah, this is it.
He was a real whole person. Probably the most educated men in the city of Philadelphia, white or black.
One of the most educated men in the city of Philadelphia, white or black. An intellectual, y'all.
Cato was an extraordinary human being.
Yup, Kia.
Cato was a Philadelphian. He was Octavius Valentine Cato.
Beautiful name.
Teacher, loyal Union man, baseball player, and civil rights leader, whose life was cut short on the volatile and violent streets of Philadelphia.
He didn't even die right away, y'all. He died somewhat, like he ran for help. It's just sad.
Charleston was a place of great opportunity for free blacks.
For Octavius to have been raised there until he was 9 or so as a free person of color, that put him in an exotic and difficult category.
By the 1830s, many free blacks were headed north to Philadelphia.
Yep. Octavius was raised in a comfortable...
So we talk about St. Helena to Harlem, Charleston to Philadelphia during this time. His family left in 1848.
Middle-class setting. He went to the Institute for Colored Youth, which was a Quaker school which took in young boys and girls. It's a school that has a quite broad liberal arts curriculum. And out of this, Cato himself eventually goes back there to teach.
All right, I'm gonna stop this here because it's so. I want to get to the news clip. I want to get to so why I want to get to the news clip. Why it's so important. Y'all can Google Octavius Cato, and find some of these clips. This is all on YouTube. Once Chris Barr put the battery in my back. Once Chris Barr, you guys, shout out Park Ranger, National Park Service. Once he put the battery in my back, I found everything. I found that EGI clip don't even sound like it's about him, but I found that, and so because it had that one part about his story in there, even though the piece was about Reconstruction and the violence that was perpetuated by white supremacists during the Reconstruction era that undermined that the success of that era. But this clip right here is important because look at how other cities, especially ones that have a better record at facilitating public art. If you go to Philly, if you haven't been there, you're going to be captivated by the murals, by the parks, by how much access you have to monuments, not just the Rocky statue, but to the museums are grand, right? That's the one thing I really miss about living in the Philly metro area. But compare this monument, the unveiling, the pageantry. Compare the construction of the literal monument to Octavius to Denmark Vesey. There is no comparison. There is no comparison.
It's made in Philadelphia.
So yeah, let me put this up. Shout out to CBS Philly.
This noon, as the city unveils a monument that was more than a century in the making. It is the first monument on Philadelphia public land honoring an African American. Good afternoon. I'm Rahel Solomon.
And I'm Jim Donovan. The new statue is the likeness of Octavius Cato. And while you may not have heard his name before, city leaders are hoping to change that. KYW News radio reporter Cherry Grego is live outside of City Hall with the story of the civil rights leader who was so much more. Good afternoon, Cherry.
Good afternoon, Jim and Rahel. What a day. So much anticipation all morning long, and the unveiling just took place.
Look how many people.
15 years to get to this point. And I'll move out the way so you can see what everyone was waiting for. This memorial has 3 categories of sculpture, including 5 pillars, a ballot box and streetcar, and of course, a 12-foot sculpture of Octavius Valentine Cato, all created by Brantley Cadet, an artist who is Haitian American.
A Haitian American artist. The pillar, they have a streetcar because he also integrated public transportation in that region. Schoolhouse, he was an educator. He was a baseball player. He was everything. This is America's worst nightmare. This is why they went so hard at Barack. This is why they go so hard at black intellectuals. This is why they go so hard. I'm going to have to center myself for a second. This is why they go so hard after me, because they know ideas. They know that ideas and thoughts, right? Inspiration, again, that moral contagion. They literally have historic laws prohibiting black people from seeing what emancipation, what liberation, what freedom looks like. And I could only imagine, I got to look more into why his family left Charleston. I want to know more about that story. It's on Wikipedia. It's on the Villanova website. It's on the Temple University website. But I want to know more because I bet you being that they were free black in Charleston, like the historian said, they were exotic. I bet you it was hostile as fuck, right? And they were like, nah, I gotta go. I gotta go to where there's a little bit more wiggle room. There's a little bit more ability for me to, I'm thinking about his parents must have thought, more ability for the growth to raise children that can do more and be more, right? Just to see that cut short because this man was a threat to the to the structure that is white supremacy, right? That statue is amazing, Nicole. Right now, think about like how our like Denmark VC. I don't even want to like. I know it was vandalized, and I know they didn't fix it yet. But even when that statue was created, people said this is not the same. This is not nowhere near as sturdy, you know, as well crafted as other monuments in Charleston, right? So yeah, we you don't even have to tell me what you think about our history, because I see how you preserve our shit. I see you Septima Clark's birthplace is a sorority house. It ain't got the same. It didn't get the same courtesy of Majeska's house. I mean, even Majeska's house was threatened by other forces, and it might not have been preserved. I see how they do it, but at least they preserved Majeska's house in Columbia. But look at Septima's birth home, a whole ass sorority house. No shade to the girls that lived there, but no, that's hallowed ground.
And he was here today. Now, who was he? A lot of people don't know him, but let me tell you, he grew up in South Philadelphia. He was educated at the Institute of Colored Youth, the predecessor of Cheney University. He was a member of St. Thomas Episcopal Church. He was a major in the National Guard. He helped recruit black soldiers who fought in the Civil War. And once they came back from the war, he began the fight for civil rights. He helped to desegregate public transportation across Pennsylvania. He also helped to galvanize the black male vote once black men won the right to vote through the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. In addition to all of this, he was a shortstop and an organizer of an all-black baseball league here in Philadelphia. And let me tell you, Mayor Jim Kenney has been so passionate about this effort, and he says that he hopes that this statue will inspire next generations. Here's what he had to say.
My hope is that someday every child in Philadelphia and every child in America will know as much as Octavius Catto as they do about George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Dr. Martin Luther King.
Come on, I'm gonna stop it there because I'm gonna get a little emotional, right? Jesus, that statue is like all inspiring, and you know who you get to make the statue matters. Now we're gonna see a lot when that Mother Emanuel. I'm still waiting on that. I'm not saying that it should have happened already or whatever, but the Mother Emanuel, I still don't even know where they're gonna put that monument. I struggle with orientation sometimes, the way my brain is set up. Like, is the monument supposed to be like in the church parking lot, like on the property? Are they gonna take some other nearby property? But I've seen the mock-up for it, but you know, I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna end it there. Wow, we went long. Yeah, of course we went long because it was rightly so. This was like one of my I hate to rank shit. Let me not rank shit. Right. Yeah, Charleston, right. Much better. And if I missed anything in the chat, y'all know, hit me up via text. Hopefully I'll respond. And Nicole, did you figure out Seaweed yet? But we're gonna get to it. That's a private conversation anyway. I'm not gonna have that. But last night, just speaking with Miss Hattie from Lennon and Mariah Parker, they kept it real with us. We went to them like, hey, y'all doing this great things around reparations and having the University of Georgia atone for taking land from the town of Lennon and literally erasing that town. Literally, black people literally moved their homes from one side of town to the other to escape demolition by the University of Georgia. And so like that conversation last night really ignited so much, and all I could jot down was your name, Little Mama, and all the other stuff we were talking about last week. So I'm grateful. Yeah, Joni, you said you've been bringing the heat. I'm trying. It's hard to keep up, but you know what? Whenever I get like hand on my knees. And Ray John's coming next week, so he's gonna be Black History in the making. But whenever I get tired, I be like, it's like conversations with Caroline that get me like, oh no, I'm gonna call this person. I'm gonna keep emailing this person. I'm gonna keep getting this person. Like tomorrow. I don't even know how to fucking land this plane tomorrow though. I had an idea, but well, I don't know. But we'll figure it out. It's gonna be something that I always used to. Like I would post it. If y'all remember me on Instagram, maybe you don't. I used to post only like mainly in my stories, and those things expire. And there were so many really, really important things that I shared that now I'm trying to go back through the archive and bring them here, like Octavius, you know, and other things. So I'm going to go back through some of the things. I had something in mind for tomorrow, but I'm going to go back through. But this is Black History Month every day. Every day this month. Please support Instagram. I want people to get to that content. I'm going to definitely make a TikTok today. I'm definitely going to make a TikTok today about the hurricane shit. And, ooh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And I'm going to do a petty. One thing I got planned for TikTok, because I'm seeing, like, what content works there. Like, I'm not just trying to take content from Instagram and put it on TikTok, even though I've done that a couple times. But what I'm trying to do is create things that are more in line with TikTok and the culture. So what I've seen from the people who make duets out of my content, people just love learning new things that they never knew, backed up by real receipts. So TikTok, I'm going to do one about Hurricane Riley, aka Hurricane Hugo, and tie it to the most devastating hurricane, and the one that was it 1893, 1898. I can't read my own penmanship or handwriting, but I'm going to talk about the displacement, 2.0, and who's the architect behind that. But I'm definitely going to do one called Petty Black History or something like that, where, and I got this inspiration from a professor from a couple years ago. Somebody asked him, like, who in history would you want to go back in time and fight? Oh, and he knocked it out the park. So I know I got a couple names. Strom is on there. I will go back and I will lump him up. Oh my God, the Daughters of the Confederacy, they all catching a fucking fade. If I could go back and fight them, and if something tells me that I could fight them by myself, all of them. But yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm like, who in history would I go back and just square up with? And I think through that, it sounds crazy and sophomoric, but nah, some of these people should have caught a fade in real life. Just like, shout out to the homie. I ain't gonna spoil that. I'm going to save that. Shout out to those who do fight back. Let's just say that. Shout out to those who do fight back. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. Let me go watch some sports. Let me go eat some more breakfast. I love y'all. Moments in Petty Black History. Joni for real. Yeah. So anyway, I love y'all. See you tomorrow, 8 o'clock if you can be here. I'd love to see you. Friday edition, Black History Month March is on. All right. I'll see you later. I'll see you in the chat for a couple minutes before I end the live stream. But I'm going to say bye here on screen. Bye. See you in the chat.